somehow you see the videos, and I usually have a very good memory for faces. Okay, I usually do. I pride myself on that, but for some reason, I don't know, maybe in my old age or something, and they say that's the first thing to go. But I am going to ask you to grab one of these documents. It is in your packet, but I ran it out for you all. The second document with the 8 points, and the third document with the top 20 interview questions before we get started, so that we can have all that handy, and I'll introduce myself and we can get started with the session. Okay, so let's go ahead and grab them. Laredo people, hello. You have all these documents that I just pointed out in your Padlet, so do they. I just want to make sure that the people that are live can write some notes, work on it as we go through the session. Okay? Hello. How's it going, sir? Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Since I want to make sure everybody's covered, my name is Carlos Olvera. Once again, I am currently a curriculum specialist. We're going to be wrapping this covered up with me actually, because we've been doing several sessions, with an interview session. What's going to happen is I'm going to go through a presentation. We're going to discuss do's and don'ts. We're going to be letting Class Dojo decide who will be the committee members. 6 individuals will be chosen randomly by Class Dojo. And it is true, it is random, by the way. One individual, the 7th person that Class Dojo identifies, will be taking the seat and facing the committee so that we can do a mock. Although it may seem very scary for some people, it is actually a very beneficial experience because you will learn how to respond and you will get feedback. Some of you are already working in a location, you've already interviewed, so you've experienced some of it. But keep in mind that there's different levels of interviews. You've got the aid interview questions, you've got the professional, the teacher interview questions, then you have the administrative. So we're going to be discussing different levels, different scenarios. Any questions you have, feel free to ask. I've had the pleasure of interviewing for teacher aides, for teachers, for administrators, and even been involved in a couple of district interviews where I got invited. So those were very interesting. But the most important thing I want to share with you is you really have to think about your personality and also think about how you're going to have that, how you're going to portray it in front of the committee. The reason I bring this up is because not everybody has the perkiest personality. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with, we're all different. That's okay. But when you're in an interview, you need to perk up. Okay? And it may sound funny, but really you do. Somebody told me, well, when I walk into the room, I'm ready, no, I go. And I tell them, when you get out of the car, you better perk up. As you're walking towards the building, as you enter the building and say hello to the secretary and sign in, you better be on already. Because they can tell things. The person that greets you at the door, the person that passes by when you're waiting in the area, the seating area, you're waiting out there in the hallway, people are passing by, are you being pleasant? Are you saying good morning? Some of them may not say good morning, but you do. So I always point that out. You need to turn it on as soon as you get out of the car so that you can already be in the right state of mind. If you're like everyone else, we get very nervous. And I say we get very nervous when we interview. Even though we know what we're talking about, we've experienced, different courses, In my case, I've had 20 years, and interviewing can still be something that you have to be very aware of, and very aware of your responses and how you answer, how you react, your facial expressions, things like that. I've shared with you before that you all have benefited from about 30 sessions of constant instruction, terminology, scenarios. You've gotten so much more than a 4-year college graduate does. You've actually gotten real life experiences shared with you. I went through the 4 years myself, traditional, what we call traditional teacher, and I don't recall having experienced as much as you all have now. It took me 20 years to actually acquire a lot of the information I've acquired. You all got it, in a semester, or let's say a year, but at least you've gotten that much. So think of your personality, think of how you're going to be, presenting yourself. Think of how you would respond. If you happen to be a person that wears their emotions on their sleeve, that's what they say, be careful with that. I mean, just have control of your expressions. It really does help. And if you need to practice, you do have to practice. Use a mirror. Driving, answer the questions that, we'll be covering questions, we'll be covering how to respond, how to articulate them. Practice all that. And if you have a loved one or, someone that is willing to practice with you, even better. I know it can be a little bit embarrassing sometimes, there's always going to be someone, I'll practice with you, and you may not be very comfortable with that person. You decide. If you need to practice while driving, go for it. So there's the items that I shared with you. I shared the fishbone. The reason I share this one is because I want you to be actively writing. Remember, we do the writing, we do the listening, the speaking, and the reading. Those are the 4 modes. Just like you're expected to be using those 4 modes of learning, your students should be using those 4 modes of learning when there's a lesson going on. This is the fishbone. I use it a lot. I enjoy it. The reason I use this one is because there's 2 things you want to be aware of. Factors that you cannot control, and then, of course, factors that you can control. There's certain things of an interview that you will have complete control of. How early you get there, how you present yourself, how you greet people. You have complete control of those things. If you know that it's in a remote location, some of these schools, you have GPS nowadays. I used to wonder about people that got lost back in the day, and I was like, it's okay, they don't know their way around now. There's no reason for someone to be late to an interview unless there's an accident, of course, because there's GPS nowadays. And I'll share some examples of how that looks bad, because we had it happen to some of our candidates. Some of our, when I was at the middle school, we had candidates that showed up late, and it didn't look right. The second document that I want you to make sure you have is this one. These are 8 scenarios that I like to share with people. Certain little don'ts. Don't do this, because many times how you prepare is very visible. It's very obvious how much you prepare for an interview. There's another one. The other document that you should have is this one. Okay, I know it reads top 20 questions. Yes, they're very common, but the reason I like to go over this is because when they ask the question, they're really asking more than what's obviously being verbalized. Okay, so we'll be going over those 2. So those are the 3 documents you have. The interview committee will be having this document. We'll be getting copies for the interview committee right here, the 6 people along with myself. You all will have it in your Padlet, and please make sure you're taking notes and just jotting down their responses, because we're going to be discussing the responses given by the candidate that gets interviewed, and we're going to be offering suggestions, okay? There is no perfect answer, but there's some answers that are more appropriate. And sometimes just one little word can throw you off and you responding in a way that might be perceived as negative or anything like that. So you want to avoid certain words. We'll be talking about that too. I asked last time, just, try to dress up a little bit, make sure you wear your Sunday's best. And I'm a stickler for that for interviews, because I've actually witnessed an administrator tell me, I can't believe she showed up to my interview wearing sandals. And it wasn't the only reason why the person didn't get it, but that was the only thing that was memorable to that administrator at the district level interviewing that person. That's the only thing she remembered about her, the sentence. So, it may sound weird or funny, but people do check you out when you walk into the room. They want to get a full picture. And how you present yourself makes a big difference. How you smile, how you make your gestures, what words you use, your tone of voice, your hand gestures. I've had people that are all over the place with their hands, and the whole interview I was looking at their hands, just wanting to grab them and stop. And I couldn't help it, but I kept looking at her hands because she was doing this all the time. It's like, relax. Okay, and I know, if it's something that it comes natural, then work on it, because obviously you're aware of it. I'm sure people that do that have been told. I have loved ones that I jokingly grab their hands and say, try to say something now. And I'm just messing with them. But just be aware that is a very distracting situation. All your names are in the class dojo. They've all been inputted by Juan here. Don't mind the little avatars. We don't call them little monsters, we call them avatars. Okay, don't start telling me to change your avatar, it doesn't really matter. But just know that when the time comes, we'll let the system decide who. We do not tell the system to identify the candidate that gets interviewed. Okay, somebody asked me the last cohort, did you rig the system? No. The system decided. It just so happens that it was, somebody that actually did very well, and that's wonderful. It's not a gotcha situation, folks. It's more of a let's learn from this, okay? So, the actual Prezi, and you all have seen the Prezi. It is on the Padlet. The Prezi itself is not. Was not part of pre-work, so don't feel that you missed out on something, okay? But enabling the flash, gotta get the flash going. So let's do that.
Mr. Olvera, when was the Prezi available in the Padlet?
I turned it in, Juan, maybe. What are we? October? I don't know. It was due a while back.
They're available.
Yeah.
We had some errors in the beginning.
Yeah.
They're available now.
Because when I opened the folder, it just had me say, like, made the session or attended
Yeah.
session,
Mark
something
the
like that.
session complete.
That one, but it didn't provide me any information or
So I
any.
pressed complete on that one.
Yeah, we're missing some stuff. But we fixed
So
it,
I pressed
uh,
complete
earlier.
even before.
So is it going to be available even after the
Yes.
session is?
So it'll be
Okay.
available
They should be,
even
yeah.
after.
We have deadlines that we have to meet to complete this, so my memory's a blur, but I know it's been a few months now that this was completed and updated, okay? We're gonna be talking about what happened before the interview, preparing for the interview, the type of questions we're going to discuss. Some of you may also share what you've experienced. I'm sure some of you will have interesting experiences. The employer's approach. I want to make sure you understand what you're looking for. Since I've been at the campus level, we look for specific things. And feel free to ask, is this okay? Or would that be okay? I'll give you my perspective. I'm a very conservative interviewer. That means I'm more traditional. In other words, I expect a lot. Everybody here has a bachelor's, right? Great. Everybody's here highly motivated? Great. What else? See, my perspective is, okay, well, everybody has a bachelor's, wonderful. What else you got? You're highly motivated? Good. What else? So my question is always, what else you got? What else makes you stand out from your neighbor? Okay, there you go. So my question would be, what specific skills do you have that somebody else next to you doesn't have? Some of you may have very specific skills that you don't consider that could be beneficial in the classroom, yet they could. I've known a teacher that got a job at an elementary because he could play the guitar. And yeah, he used it instructionally. He just happened to know how to play the guitar. He was my friend, my compadre. He's from Mexico. He's Mexican, teaching in an American school French. That's what he did. He learned French. He got his bachelor's. He actually got his doctorate in Spanish literature. And now he's a technology director for a district. Totally different areas, but he was able to use all those skills to get himself a district level position that he really enjoys, and the district has benefited from that. So I'll ask yourself, what experiences do you have that you can bring into the classroom beyond the bachelor's, beyond the motivation, beyond the wonderful personality? I'm sure everybody has a wonderful personality. What else you got? What skills do you have that will benefit your classroom, your campus? How else can you assist? We had an administrator at a high school I was at, and we found out she was a cheerleading sponsor when she was a teacher. Well, guess what? She had to help out with a cheerleader team, not directly, but she had to oversee them because she knew about cheering. I didn't know anything about cheering, so I wasn't going to be out there telling the cheerleaders how to do things, or the sponsor. But she did, because she had a prior experience. So what else do you have? Okay? And also learn to sell it, folks. Learn to promote yourself. I know a lot of us are shy about promoting ourselves. You know, we don't like to, we consider it bragging or feeling cocky. There are instances where an interview committee will perceive someone as being cocky if your tone is like that. But if you just plainly say, you know what, I have been involved in this, I've collaborated with the excellent groups of people to get this done. See, you're saying, yes, I've done things, but I have also been part of a team. When you start saying I, and there's nobody else mentioned in those phrases or statements, that's when the committee might see like, oh, okay. I was in another district, and we had what was perceived as an administrator that we called him the I administrator, because everything was about him doing everything, and he never gave credit to other individuals that were part of his team. So that after a while, that gets old. Very few people do things by themselves, folks. Very few people. Okay? So always consider, presenting yourself as part of a team, and how you've learned, how you've acquired certain skills, how you have completed certain tasks, how you've had certain successes. How do you present yourself? Yes, it's good to be humble, but at the same time, you need to learn to sell yourself in reference to certain skills, especially because the other 15 people that are after the job you're after are going to be trying to do that. Okay? So, what happens during the interview? Certain legal issues, certain questions they cannot ask. We're going to cover those. Negative factors that can be observed. There are certain negative things. Body posture, attentiveness, even the way you're sitting, the way you're, just presenting yourself. And I'll model one that is really memorable for me. For a district administrator to act like that in an interview was very negative for me as a candidate, and it is very memorable because you expect a lot from the people that are even higher than you. What are the principals looking for? the questions principals and interview committees ask, and of course, we'll wrap it up with a mock interview. The mock interview will be after the break. So really, half of the session is discussion and sharing and pointing out certain things. The other half of the session is the actual interview. Laredo will benefit from viewing and chatting. You all live will benefit from hearing the answers. And I will ask the candidate to make sure he or she uses their teacher voice so that everybody can hear. Okay? So, let me present this one. I'm not going to go slide by slide, but I want to make sure, okay? I want to make sure that we cover specific areas. Okay? Now, as we do this, the presentation, please make sure you're using your fishbone to document as much as possible as to things you can control, things you cannot. The first step, folks, for those of you that haven't applied yet, make sure everybody's web-based now. Your districts are web-based. Make sure that you complete your application on time and thoroughly. The HR department is not going to call you. Mr. Olvera, we're worried you haven't finished your application. They're not gonna call me. They're going to indicate, nope, incomplete, and not get on the list to get interviewed. Mr. Olvera has to call or visit, ideally visit HR and say, is my file complete? Is anything missing? If there's something missing, please tell me right now so I can take care of it. Everything's PDF now. Your college transcript, your resume, your letter of intent, it's all PDF, guys. Everything is web-based, so it's trackable, but you need to be on top of it. I've had instances where people will call me, I thought I was gonna interview, I applied, I never got the call. So the person contacted HR, well, you were missing this. Well, you never called me. No, you're the one that's applying. You're the one that's interested in the position. HR has so many people to deal with, they're not gonna call you to, remind you. You're the one that's interested in the position. So make sure that is taken care of. Your references, they usually require 3 references, folks. Make sure you contact your references to let them know that they might get a call. Make sure that these references like you. I've seen teachers that select interesting individuals that they thought were going to be fine or they thought weren't going to get called, and they got called. I got a call about 8 years ago about a teacher that had been working with us for about 3 years. A very interesting person. Sadly, nobody to brag about. But when I got the call was, Ms. Olvera? Yes, this is Ms. Olvera. So, did she work for you? Yes, she worked in this school. What can you tell me about her? Well, she worked in this school. Can you tell me about her qualities? She worked in this school. That's all I had to say. By the 3rd time I said it, the person said, oh, okay, well, thank you very much. I didn't badmouth the person. All I said, yes, she used to work here. It doesn't take a lot, to be handled like that, guys. Because your reputation and the way you act and the way you present yourself as a professional has consequences. Okay? I was not going to be speaking negatively about the person. All I said, yes, she used to work here. So the person on the other side, on the other end of the line, she's like, oh, well, thank you very much. And that was the end of that conversation. So what happens there is you want to make sure your reference is someone you can absolutely, positively count on. Even, call them up and say, hey, how you doing, sir? You might be getting a call, and they'll react right away. Oh, of course, whatever you need, I'll wait for the call. There was a funny situation, and Sal's watching. It's hilarious. I think it's funny. I don't think he is. He does. Sal was applying for something, a few years back, and he told me about it. I said, "Oh yeah, of course, Sal. I've worked with you for a while. Positive reviews, everything." Sal didn't tell me he has a middle name. So when I got the email with the reference letter, I did not recognize the name, so I didn't fill it out. A couple months later, he's like, hey, what happened? I didn't see the form, or, you didn't fill out the, oh, I didn't get anything on Sal Martinez. Oh, no, my name is Sal something, I had no idea. So, you have to be clear, folks. Give people the heads up, make sure your reference is ready to answer the question. Because we do call, I've called references. I've called and asked, hey, what can you tell me about this person? I enjoy my job so much that when I call schools, I usually don't talk to the principal. I'll talk to the dean of instruction, the fellow teachers, whoever I can get a hold of, because I try to get the individuals that actually work with the person. The principal probably doesn't know you. If you don't stand out, the principal probably doesn't know you, especially in a high school. High schools are massive. I have people in a high school introducing themselves to each other after a few months. They're still introducing themselves to each other, okay? So your reference needs to be somebody who knows you and knows your work style, your work ethic. Probably even hopefully knows your name and a little bit about you because you've taken the time to share a little bit, just in passing, of course. You don't have to be buddies, okay? So those 3 to 5 references, have them ready. Have a list already made of the 3 or 5 individuals that can speak very highly of you. Do they have to be in education? No. Some of you come from different backgrounds, banking, nursing. Some of you are in, I know I've met banking people, nursing people, police officer. I mean, you have individuals, whoever has supervised you and know what type of a worker you are, those are the ones that you want because they know they can share, they can elaborate about your work ethic. Also have your philosophy of education prepared, folks. Doesn't mean they're gonna ask for it, but definitely have it ready. Why do you want to be an educator? I have friends, and they still make, they're in Houston. They love to bring up the little joke about, well, people get into education because of 3 reasons: May, June, and July. And that's not the point, folks. This is not a job. This is a career. A job is an hourly thing. A career is, doesn't matter how many hours because you need to get a job done. So as a career person, you want to make sure that you understand that. Why are you in this, in education? Some people are born to be educators. They're just natural educators. Even when they're kids, they set up the little classrooms at home. Some people are natural educators in the sense that if they get asked for help, they just jump in and start helping. They want to show people how to do things. Those are your natural educators. Others become educators. There's individuals out there that have a lot of knowledge about certain content areas, about the medical field, about the financial fields, and they learn to become educators and they learn to enjoy it. Some of the best teachers I've met come from the banking world, the psychology fields, and even law enforcement. And they're some of the best teachers because they bring in with them all that experience into the classroom and they make it even more interesting. You don't have to be a 4-year certified teacher, one of those traditional ones, to be the best one, the best teacher around. So, how many of you have your resume? And how many of you have updated your resume? I mean, I would imagine that you've updated your resume after 30 sessions of being here. Think about it. All this learning you've done, your resume has actually improved because you've covered areas like classroom management, best practices, code of ethics, all those topics that you've worked on. All those topics, ideally the ones that you feel more comfortable with, you could list them on your resume because at least you can say, hey, I've been trained in all these. You show up to the interview, yeah, code of ethics, classroom management, technology. I've done all these best practices. I know what the STAR is. I know what the TEKS are. A lot of new teachers can't say that. They don't have STAR STAR information. They haven't been trained on the TEKS yet. Yeah, they've heard about them. They just haven't formally been trained on them. A lot of them lack technology know-how. I used to accept technology as an issue back in the 80s when people told me, well, computers weren't around when I was a youngster. Now, I don't accept it as an excuse much. Technology has been around too long for us to use it as an excuse. I've shared before, if you're not comfortable with technology, get comfortable with technology. You can't avoid it nowadays. There's no way you can avoid technology, folks. It's everywhere. Unless you're out there in the woods in a cabin, you know, not creepy, but okay. Resume, make sure you can show up with your resume to the interview, folks, and as you arrive, you can, you know, they'll already have a copy of it most likely because they print them out. But it's good to be able to have a nice printed resume, you know. I know some people like to focus on the type of paper and all that. That's fine, you know, it's memorable. Sometimes some people put a picture on your resume, great. If you feel comfortable putting a picture on your resume, that's fine. The only thing I can tell you is on your resume, get to the point. You know, where have you been? What have you done? Where have you been? What's your goal? Because we only have a few seconds to skim through it. When you hand it over to us and we're presenting ourselves and this and that, you have a few seconds to read the resume. So if you do one of those resumes that looks like a dissertation, so much detail that you want to share everything, you're running the risk that it's not going to be read. I mean, and if you do 2 pages, forget it.
So they're not asking for portfolios anymore, because they used to.
Depends on your district. Some districts will all ask for portfolio, some don't. I haven't seen portfolios in a while. Is it great if you show up with a portfolio just to show what you've done? We'll look at it. I don't have a problem. I'll say, sure, let me see it. Okay. And as you're talking, I'll be like, okay. I mean, it'll stand out, especially if it's visual, certificates, things like that. You know, it'll be more memorable. Whatever makes you more memorable. When I first became an administrator, the thing that impressed my boss, which she never looked into, was my portfolio and my resume was on a CD. Okay, this was 22 years ago. You know, I put in a CD, digital. I digitized my resume, my portfolio, everything. He told me years later that was the thing that impressed him the most. I was the only one that gave it to them digitally. He never looked at it. He never opened it. But he was impressed that it was on a CD. I could have given him a blank CD. But it had a nice cover. And that's the type of person I am. I like digital stuff. And nowadays, it's even better. So think of it that way. What can you share when you arrive? What can you pass out? A portfolio, great, you have it. Out of courtesy, they'll look at it, but they don't require it. You know, a resume. It'd be good to have a nice little short resume just to get to the point, so they can skim through it. Always makes you more memorable. Other than that, be careful about taking too much. There's different formats for the resumes. These are, I included different formats in your Padlet. One of my favorite ones, I mean, they're all different, they're all good, depends how, see that right there, that's a lot of text. Okay, that's a 2-pager. I would not read beyond the first page.
That's way too much.
By the second page, it's like, okay, if this person's busy, and obviously they've got a lot, I'm not gonna read the whole thing, guys. I wouldn't. A little bit brief, more brief. This one is actually one of my favorite because it mentions the core competencies. In other words, what am I good at? Experience, and then credentials and all that. But the part that I love the most is the site. Let me try to, right here. Okay, right there. That, right there. These are 3 references that were asked to go ahead and write something about me. So as a reference, that person wrote that Linda's dedication to her students is exceptional, consistently brings creativity and innovation into her lesson plans and classroom. So in a little paragraph, that person has a reference right there. Very quick. So as an interview committee, like, wow, you know, this person actually got 3 people to document in writing how much they like her professionally. So that's something that I like to share. I like this format a lot. And like I said, all formats are good if you make them the right way. If you make it a point to be brief, to the point, share exactly what skills you have, what experiences, whatever works for you, okay? So these are just samples. I will tell you that some administrators, when they look at the experience section, if you write down from 2001 to 2002, I was here. 2002 to 2003, I was here. 2003 to 2005, I was here. Some administrators perceive that as, this person can't stay put. This person can't stay anywhere. So be careful about jotting down too many jobs, because in my case, I like variety. I've been in 8 locations. As an educator, 8 locations. That's a lot for some people. For me, it's a wonderful experience. But I know administrators that say, no, this person obviously can't stick around for more than 2 years. What's going on with this person? Is this person not have a nice personality that they've got to move?
Unless you're moving in up,
And another thing, are they moving up? That's different. If you're moving up,
then it's good.
wonderful. If you're just moving laterally from, from one school to the other, to the other, to the other, okay, what's going on here? I had a colleague of mine who had a sister in dental field, dental hygiene or something. And she would move around the dentist's office in Brownsville, and she was always talking about, oh, I can't, these people, I don't like them, and then next job, these people, I don't like them, next time. And after a while, I'd be like, maybe it's you, because obviously you can't get along with anybody. There comes a point, folks, that people get a reputation, and it all comes down to how you act. What tone are you using? What personality are you displaying? Okay? We don't have to be the perkiest, happiest people in the world, but we do have to collaborate with people. We do have to have those social skills that make you part of a team. I was in a high school where this very intelligent woman that taught physics was collaborating with me. And you know why I say she was very intelligent? Because she told me she was very intelligent. She actually, I'm very smart. Oh, good for you. Yeah. But she had very little people skills. Very little. She was the type that would tell you, no, that is incorrect. And we're talking adults here, sharing different opinions, sharing comments. But she would straight up tell you, no, that is incorrect. And, it's awkward. And she was. Very intelligent person. And yes, she was intelligent because first of all, she was teaching physics. I don't know about you, but I wouldn't touch that, I wouldn't touch that physics area at all. But she handled it well. And the very intelligent students related to her nicely. But the ones that struggled didn't relate to her because those social skills were lacking. You see what I'm saying? So you have to be able to work with the low-performing kids, the mid, and the higher performing kids. You gotta be able to function with all of them. So just keep in mind, I know some, like I said, and I'm not going to tell you to become or have the Joker smile all the time, folks. It's not like that. It's about knowing when and where. It's about walking into an interview and selling it. I'm a very serious person. My 8-year-old told me, Dad, you're very serious. That 8-year-old is telling me that. And I go, really? I don't think I'm serious. I think I'm a great guy. But when an 8-year-old tells you you're serious, that says a lot. I used to walk into interviews, when I was becoming an administrator, and I was very serious because in my mind, administration is serious business. You're taking the lead in a campus. You're supposed to model and take charge of a school. And yet I would be in an interview waiting outside in the hallway, and I would hear another candidate walking out laughing, and people were laughing. And I couldn't do that. Every so often I do, and but it's different for all of us, folks. Just remember, too serious is not wonderful, but too much of a joker, you gotta be careful with that. You can't do extremes. You have to work with your personality. I'm sure by now you noticed I drop little, comments every so often, but I don't really laugh about them myself. I just drop them. That's what I do. That's my style. My sense of humor is very dry. So think about it. Why are you here? And be able to put it in writing. Why do you want to be an educator? You know, some of you have had experiences with students and children that you really value. Some of you have had experiences with family members that you've helped teach. We had a candidate about 2 cohorts ago that because his niece was struggling and he started helping her with mathematics, he was good at mathematics, but then when he started helping her, he's like, you know, I could do this. I could do this as you know, to teach. I want to teach this. He felt the urge to teach mathematics, and then he started exploring, and next thing you know, he's sitting in our classroom here. He became a mathematics teacher, but he had an engineering background. So there's different reasons. Just make sure they're not May, June, and July. Okay? Screenings are gonna happen, folks. They're going to be, the way this works, the districts, they get a list of people that have applied. They check your qualifications. From that list of 20, 30 people, they decide who is highly qualified, who would be the one to get interviewed. So they get maybe 10, and they put them on the candidate list. The principal then looks for the candidate list and says, okay, well, I have a 3rd grade position. How many candidates do you have? They do the search on the computer, and they get 10 names. So they start calling. Okay, we'd like to interview you. When you get the call, they might sneak up on you, folks. You might be at McDonald's. You might be driving. You might be doing, you know, just pretty much doing some daily routine, and you're gonna get a call. Yes, Mr. Olvera, we'd like to interview you. We are scheduling interviews for this 3rd grade position Wednesday afternoon. We have 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock available. Which one would you prefer? So you have to be ready for that. You have to be ready to, you know, think fast, what commitments you have. Some people will get nervous. You know, if you're driving, pull over. Seriously, because you want to make sure you get your calendar maybe out, take out your calendar. You know what, Wednesday, I'm gonna have to take half a day, so I'll be there at 2. Give yourself time, folks. Don't ever be rushing into an interview. The last thing you wanna do is be rushing and you're all pumped up, adrenaline's pumping, and then you gotta sit down and answer questions. Some people take half a day. If you're working already, some people take half a day. They go have breakfast, they relax, they go over the different questions they're gonna ask, and they try to get into the zone. That's really what you're doing. You're trying to relax because you know they're gonna ask certain questions, and those are the ones we're gonna go over. And then, you know, first interview happens, you might get a call, you get a call for a second interview. Okay, more questions. Some of you might deal with phone interviews. It happens. You might be on vacation. A lot of principals are looking for teachers in the summer. Well, people are traveling in the summer. I have witnessed a phone interview. I had to step out of the room because the person was so nervous. She asked me to step out of the room. I'm going to interview. And of course, out of courtesy, I had to step out. But it was a phone interview. The principal, the area administrator was here in Brownsville. We were in front. But you don't say no. I've done a phone interview by Skype. I actually interviewed somebody. We were looking for a choir director. We interviewed the young lady, and I say young, to me 30 is young, you know, because you know, it's different when you get older. But we interviewed through Skype, and it worked out. The person was able to answer the questions. She knew the content, you know, answered very well, elaborated, articulated very well, got the job. Then she moved from, I don't remember where, to Texas. So it happens. Phone interviews happen. Skype interviews happen. That could happen to you, folks. Because you're not. Some of you might be interviewing in other districts. So just be ready to work with those different interview versions. Okay.
It's awkward. The phone interviews are awkward.
They can be because there might be an awkward silence sometimes. You got to be careful with those.
They do group interviews too.
The what?
Group interviews?
I've never done a group interview. I've seen some awkward interviews, and I've heard of certain interviews that are done to make people nervous, and that was the one that really bothered me because it was a table of about 5 people, 5 committee members on this side, 5 committee members on this side. The candidate was facing them, you know, and the principal was right behind her, just there, taking notes. So here I am interviewing with 10 people. The principal of the school is right there behind. I'd never seen that, but it was described to me. I found it a little bit unfair because, you know, as any person would think, what is this person doing? You know, that to me was not appropriate, but that's the way the campus decided to interview. There's different versions of how to interview, but the one thing I can tell you is the committees have to make sure they ask you and her and him the same questions, giving them the same amount of time. There has to be equity. You can't be asking, you know, you can't be asking one person different questions than the rest, because now, you know, it can become an issue. Grievances can come up. So you tell them the rules, how much time do you have, how many questions you have, you ask the same questions, and usually it'll be one person asking the question. In this case, like in our case here, I'll be asking the questions. You try to use the same tone, you give the person the same amount of time to keep it fair. Okay? That's done on purpose, so that nobody complains about it. Okay? Now, when I say group interview, that's, it also depends on which group is interviewing. There are campuses that'll have 3 people. There are campuses that'll have 10 people. So you might walk into a room with 10 individuals and they're all looking at you. You want to shake, you know, you want to try and shake everybody's hand, but sometimes, I mean, can you imagine 10 people going around the whole place? So you try to, you know, present yourself. If they're close by, you shake their hand. If they're not, then you try to wave. You know, always be social, but you don't want to invest too much time in the handshaking. You're losing time from your interview. Okay? And you are told you have this amount of time. I think 15 minutes, 10 questions. That's not a lot, folks. You get to the point. You try to be detailed, but you get to the point. And the one question they'll always ask, tell us about yourself. Okay? How many of you think you're very interesting? No, seriously. Yeah, there's nothing wrong. You know, you should. You should think you're an interesting person. There's nothing wrong with thinking you're interesting. I would hope so. Thank you. The reason I say that is because when they ask you, tell us about yourself, you should be able to start sharing about yourself, not from birth. Please do not. We had a candidate that, well, I was born. No. Start from college. Start from certain experiences that you've had that are connected to students. Kickball coach, cheerleading mom, or football dad, or, you know, anything that connects you with students or children, so that they can say, oh, well, this person is willing to dedicate time to work with children. Anything that'll sell the fact that you're involved with students. There's a little program called HOSTS, Help One Student to Succeed, where people volunteer to help kids read. I had a friend of mine that was a lawyer in Mexico, came over, wanted to become certified, became a paraprofessional, volunteered for HOSTS. Now he's teaching. HOSTS, Help One Student to Succeed, HOSTS. Yeah. You know, I don't know if he's still around, but you know, schools are always looking for volunteers and parental involvement people. But when they ask you tell us about yourself, you should have a list of highlights of your life already ready, because otherwise you're going to be scrambling. There's so much more. There's so much you can say about yourself. You can go either way, folks. Some people choke and they don't know. They have no idea what to say about themselves. Other people open the floodgates and they want to say everything about themselves, down to, you know, too many experiences, or jokingly talk about how they broke their arm in college. You never know. So you want to get to the point, but make highlights, have bullets ready, you know, because you know they're going to ask you. Tell us about yourself. How would you answer if I asked you right now, tell me about yourself?
You can't take paper or anything, right?
Some people do, but usually they'll pick them up because the notes, they'll have to pick them up. Because they don't want you to start sharing with other people what the questions were. I've taken notes. When I was younger, I would take notes because sometimes they would ask 2 or 3 questions within one question, and I would put like one word about the first part of the question, the second part of the question,
Well, so you could write while they're interviewing you?
I would write one word,
Word.
just to remind me what that three-part question was about. Well, what's the first part of the question, second part of the question, third part of the question? But I'm talking about administrative interviews. You may have a two-part question in a teacher interview.
You can't ask them to repeat the question?
Yes, you can. Of course you can. You know, and that's a very good point. Can you please repeat the question? And there's nothing wrong with that. I would not take offense, or I would not, if anything, I would say, you know what, thank you, because maybe I wasn't loud enough. It happens. You're very focused, you want to do your best, but, you know, you can get distracted. That's another thing. The people in the committee, when they're watching you and you're watching them, you know, I have a thing, I don't do a lot of notes. I don't write. I'm not the note-taking type. I'm the listening type, and I'm the looking type. I'm looking at your gestures. I'm looking at I'm listening for those words that I want to hear. I'm looking at your, posture. That's what I'm looking at. And some people have their head down. Some committee members might have their head down the whole time writing every single word you say. I don't do that. See, so even the committee has different styles. Like some committee members will be looking at you the whole time, and some committee members don't want to look at you because they're afraid that they might show you something. You know, they're afraid because they're told, don't show too much emotion, let's be professional, you know, don't start agreeing with them all about, you know, because they might take it the wrong way. Some people, oh, great interview. You gotta be careful. I would always tell my committee members, be cordial, be professional, don't show too much, you know, but be respectful, you know. And another thing that I really liked doing when I would interview teachers and candidates, I liked to call them back, whether they got the job or not, because in my mind, to go interview and then not to get a call back, it hurts, right? But out of courtesy, you know, what I did, I would say, you know what, Ms. Rivera, thank you very much for interviewing. We've gone ahead and recommended someone. Good luck, interviewing. That's it. I've told you, thank you. I've told you, you're not it. And I've told you, good luck. But now at least you can move forward instead of wondering and wondering and wondering what happened. Okay? A lot of schools don't do that because they don't want to make anybody feel bad or, you know, rejected. The way I perceive it, hey, there's closure here. You weren't the candidate that was selected, but I wish you the best. You know, keep on
Has it ever
going.
happened where you do hire and the person already found another job?
It has happened, and you're like, well, thank you very much, best of luck. It has happened too. They change their mind. In the summer, a lot of principals are scrambling to fill the positions, folks. So some candidates actually get nervous because they have 2 or 3 offers, and now they have to make the best decision. So hopefully, you know, you're blessed with 2 or 3 offers. That's always, it's wonderful to get 2 or 3 offers. And some people will, because, you know, they recognize. I got to meet this young man, ex soccer player from a high school here, star soccer player at the university he went to. He applied for a teaching position in Brownsville, but there were no teaching positions for PE. There was a PE aide position, and he was, you know, a little bit concerned. I said, you know what, get in there, because once you're in the system, you can then, you know, work your magic. And, you know, by the first 2 months, he was already being recognized as a very involved individual, whippersnapper. That's what some people call them, whippersnappers. So I don't see him lasting as a PE aide for too long. He was a star soccer player. The principal that hired him called him 10 minutes after he left the room. Okay, we want to recommend you, do not commit to anybody else. And he got nervous, but he called me and I said, look, there's no other teaching positions right now. Get into the system, and then once you're in there, then you can apply for different positions. So that happened, you know. There's so many versions, folks. There's so many scenarios that can happen. Just keep in mind how you sell yourself really makes a difference. And remaining calm. How many of you are aware that you might have a little nervous movement when you get nervous? How many of you stutter when you get nervous? Yeah. When I get nervous, I start talking fast. I know people that when they get nervous, they start stuttering. And, okay, relax. There's one administrator, a friend of mine, who is a great guy, but I always tell him, you know what, you need to have a talk with Mr. Jack Daniels before you present. You need to calm down, buddy. Because he gets super nervous, and he's a very intelligent man, knows his stuff, but for some reason, public speaking to him is the most terrible thing. Okay? So if you're the type that gets nervous easily, then you need to practice what you're going to say so that you can get used to it. And the more you repeat it, the more you'll get comfortable with it, especially if you do it in front of people. Your true friends will help you. The friends that are just going to be laughing at you or making fun of you, I would practice with those guys. Okay, it happens, folks. Or record yourself. Nowadays, just put the phone in front of you, record yourself answering the questions, and then critique yourself. Did you all see my videos? The ones where red shirt, the 10-minute videos, what do you call them?
The introduction.
The introduction videos? I had to do those. I was in Houston, and I had to do those, and there were a few takes that I had to do. And those were done with a phone. You do what you have to do, folks. You have to practice. Be aware of what you need to work on, really. We had a few people. I remember having a candidate that she answered this way. Ma'am, how would you describe the research or these strategies? Can you describe them? And her response was, I don't know them, but I'll just look them up, and I don't need to memorize them. I'll just Google them. That was her response, and our response as a community is like, okay. We just said okay, and put down some numbers. Obviously she lost points for that, but her response was, you don't want to say I don't know, but you definitely, I need to look into that. This is what I do know about that, and try to work with it. You have heard so much information in these 30 sessions, folks. It's overwhelming. So before an interview, make sure you revisit the best practices, the classroom management. There's a lot of notes there. The Padlets are available. They're not closed, right? The Padlets are going to be available.
Don't be close.
Oh, they can download the stuff, or you already downloaded? My advice to you all: download everything, because you can always refer back to it. Okay, that's the advice I always tell people. Any questions so far? And feel free. I mean, you might have a question from an interview you had or something you heard. Any questions so far?
How many minutes tell us about yourself?
I wouldn't go beyond 3 minutes. I wouldn't go beyond 3 minutes. Get to the point. Your college. What have you been doing? Experiences you've had. Just trying to highlights of your life leading to that moment. And it's always good to say, these different experiences that I've had have allowed me to build a skill set so that I can be ready for this opportunity. You always use words like that. I know that some people don't like, well, I don't want to sell myself. I don't want to sound cocky. I don't want to brag. But you know what? You are selling yourself. You're trying to get them to buy what you're selling. So you don't want to make your experiences, you don't want to downgrade your experiences. I always joke about the person that they told me, well, I don't want to tell them where I used to work. And I go, why? Well, I worked here. And I said, no. You tell them you used to work in a Fortune 500 distribution center. She used to work at a McDonald's drive-thru. But it's a Fortune 500 distribution center. It's just how pretty you want to make it sound, folks. It may sound funny, but you know what? You're selling it. Okay? Some of you have had different experiences that I'm not aware about. And you have certain expertise that I'm not aware about, or I myself don't have. So think about all that. How can you bring that? How can you sell that in an interview? Because everybody else has a bachelor's and everybody else wants the job. So that committee needs to see something in you. I had a candidate that had gotten her bachelor's and her master's, and she was very excited. But then when it came to the question, what contact have you had with children at the middle school level? None. She hadn't volunteered. She had no children of her own. She hadn't been involved in any community events. She hadn't subbed. She had absolutely no contact with children. Okay, so yeah, not even, some of us have children, so at least we can say, you know what, I've had contact with children. I know how they can act up. So, and some of you have been coaches, some of you have volunteered, some of you are probably involved in the Charo Day stuff. I don't know, whatever you're involved in, that's how you sell yourself. What involvement do you have? Okay, and if you don't have any involvement now, folks, get into something, because when you become an educator, it's not just about the classroom. The classroom is the core of it, but there's much more. Students will be involved in athletics, UIL, chess, different competitions. You'll be expected to be part of other community activities. It is a career. It's not an 8 to 5. I've had paraprofessionals that tell me, well, I have to clock out for lunch, and then I clock out at 5, and I'm done. Well, for teachers, it's not exactly that. You're welcome to clock out at 5 if you want to as a teacher, but if you're not done, you're not done. It's different, because now you're a salaried person, and the hours don't really matter. Okay, there's some teachers work 40, 50 hours. Some work more, but I can tell you that it all comes back to, are you being successful? Hey, if you put in your 40 hours and your children are being successful, good for you, enjoy. But if your children are not being successful, then something's gotta happen. What's going on? Is it the kids? Is it you? Is it the parents? I mean, is it all three combined? What's going on? Okay? So some of you might actually have pre-interview situations. I always get a kick out of this one. I had a principal that was interviewing for an assistant principal, so he decided to say, well, why don't we just have breakfast at the country club? And this was 20 years ago. Now it's like, really? You wouldn't want to invite a person, because it was a female. You don't really do that. That's not an interview. That's breakfast. Okay? But some people like to break the ice. So how do you break the ice? Some of you might comment on, the weather. Oh, well, did you have a hard time finding this place? Oh no, I just GPSed it. Everything's good. Small chat. Some of you have nice, simple chat. Some of you have to work on it. One of the most interesting questions they asked me a while back was, what's the name of the person that cleans your office? And this was the last question. And when I talked about it with my buddies, or the people that I also interviewed, some of them didn't know the name of the gentleman. My response was, yeah, that's Mr. Cano. Mr. Cano says hi every evening, every afternoon when I'm leaving around 5:30. He walks in, we have a chat. The fact that I knew the gentleman's name, apparently it was important to somebody that I knew the custodian's name. Because that question was the last question in the interview. And yet some people didn't know the name of the custodian that cleans their office every single day. So you see, look at those kind of questions they're asking. What does that tell you? They're looking for somebody that can connect with people, not just the ones at the person's level, but maybe other individuals that are helping around that person. Courtesy will take you a long way, folks. Humility will take you a long way. Okay? Remember that. You're going to be working as part of a team. You're going to have teachers that you're going to get along with beautifully, and you're going to have teachers that you probably wouldn't want to have lunch with. And that's okay. You're still going to have to be professional about it. Okay? There's so much variety out there, folks. All I can tell you is how you handle it or how you present yourself makes a big difference. Let me go to this section. Okay? First impression, folks. When you walk into the room, first impression you make makes a big difference. Okay? How you shake a hand. Some people shake the hand very softly, some people shake the hand too hard. You actually have to, be careful about that. I remember being in a committee where one of the ladies, when she shook the candidate's hand, he squeezed too hard, and she was like, ow, apparently he squeezed too hard, and the whole interview she kept going like this. But what do you think she was thinking about? She wasn't thinking about his credentials, she was thinking, this guy squeezed my hand too hard. And it was so weird, but something as simple as that, shaking a hand, not too soft, not too hard, but just that first impression, how you walk in, how you smile. Do any of you know people that smile and it looks awkward when they smile? Have you all ever seen anybody like that? There's people that look uncomfortable when they smile. We had one. We had a teacher at a school, a super teacher, committed, but when she smiled, it looked fake. And to this day, some people are not smilers, folks. But you have to work with it. Some people don't show teeth when they take pictures. Some people do. Have you ever noticed that? But as long as you're smiling, make sure there's a smile there. That is an impression. That is very memorable. Establishing the rapport. You're gonna be in a chair. Somebody's gonna be in this chair over here all alone. And people are gonna be behind you watching. And the community members are gonna be looking at you. You have to be relaxed. You have to be comfortable.
And you're gonna be online.
And you're online, thank you. Laredo is going to be watching you. Laredo's watching you from over there, okay? You're right, people are watching, but you know what? You're walking into a career that you're gonna be in front of the classroom or around the classroom, not just in front, for what, 30, 40 years? You might as well get used to being watched. Not only that, folks, when you're a teacher, people catch you at H-E-B, at Walmart, the kids, that's my teacher. Yeah, they're watching, people are watching.
Teacher, you're shopping, teacher.
You're shopping, they're amazed, I do come out of my cave every so often.
Yeah, I was writing on the wall and I see you went down. Mr. H, what's that, Mr. H?
But there you go. The sleep went up. People are watching. You're right, people are watching all the time. And you're a teacher now. I've had to deal with it for 22 years, folks. I've been running into my first graders. They're now in college. I ran into one of them at Sam's. She's a cashier. Hi, Mr. How you doing, Mr. Olvera? Hi. I had no idea it was her. She changed a lot. So, can you imagine Mr. Olvera acting like a jerk at Sam's?
That was on sale.
There you go. That's a wrong price, yeah. So you're always being watched as an educator. And of course, the news loves to point out which district you work for. That's another thing. Like I said, if you're gonna show up to the interview, when you show up to the interview, make sure you wear your Sunday's best. It is a special day. You are showing them respect by preparing for it, by dressing up for it, by just being in the right state of mind. And if that requires caffeine, make sure you get caffeinated. Some of us need caffeine, folks. I'm one of those people. Don't talk to me before the caffeine kicks in. Because I'm not the same person. I stepped out of the car, and my daughter told me, "Have you had coffee today?" She could tell in my face. How old is she? 16. She could tell in my face that I had not been caffeinated yet. So if you have that natural, wonderful, happy look, naturally, good for you. But if you need caffeine, then get caffeinated. Whatever it takes to prep for that interview, folks. Some people like to make sure they don't eat too early or too close to the interview. Some people don't want to drink water too close to the interview. Some people, whatever works for you.
Have you ever had anybody throw up?
Throw up in an interview? No, but I've had somebody literally raise your hand, can I go to the restroom? Go right in. So we stopped the clock, went to the restroom. It happens.
Because sometimes the nervous gets to your stomach and
It does.
even
Nerves.
though you're not sick, but
Nerves.
you get diarrhea because you're nervous.
Nerves,
And
you
you
know,
can't handle it.
and that's the point.
Can't hold
And
you
I'm
can't
glad,
hold
I'm glad
it.
you mentioned that, because that's the whole point of this session. If you know it's coming, start prepping for it. Everybody has certain routines. I have certain routines when I present. One of my first routines, folks, I get here around 5:20 on purpose. I do it on purpose, because I have a routine before I start talking. Okay, and it's my own personal routine that I got used to. So when you interview, make sure you have your routine down. Turn off your phone. Take care of the restroom. Have your, make sure everything's tucked in. Make sure everything is shined up. You'd be amazed how people show up sometimes. We've had people that show up sick, and if you show up sick, you know what? Kind of laugh about it, and the committee will be very understanding. There are people that have shown up. I know a couple principals that showed up to their principal interview sick, and they got the job. But they kind of made a little crack. Well, I crawled out of bed, but I'm here. And the committee laughed about it, but they played it up. Learn to do that. The initial judgments, folks, they're based on appearance, manners, energy, enthusiasm, and responsiveness. Manners is a big thing, especially with me. I'm a very traditional person when it comes to manners. Because to me, opening the door, helping, that's something that says a lot about the person. And yet I've seen candidates in the hallway that are either on their cell phone the whole time, or they see something happen, they don't help. It actually, I remember one of those. Somebody dropped something, and the person was right there and just looked over and kept on going. Tells me a lot about that person. I mean, very subtle. That you don't make the decision based on that, but that is a little factor. It's a little everything factors in, folks. Everything factors in. Okay, don't worry about that. What time is it? 10, okay. Yeah, I'm a little bit early. Questions so far? Think about what you're going to be walking into. Some of you are going to be walking into elementaries, right? Okay, I'll tell you right now, elementary teachers, they're cheery and they're perky. They're like that. Elementary teachers are like the kids. Middle school teachers, a little bit feistier, a little bit more serious. I worked at all three levels. The high school teachers, they do scrutinize a lot of things, because you're going to be one of them. So they tend to be teachers, for the most part, act like their students. That's as simple as I can put it. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question, because when I plan to interview, I've always been with elementary, I worked with elementary and then I taught elementary. So I'm gonna transition to middle school. So all that experience that I have, how am I going to make it to where they understand that, yeah, I've worked with kids, but I can also do middle school without actually having really experience?
That's how you sell that. I'm coming in with all this experience that I'm willing to adapt to the needs of my future students.
Oh.
Because that is valuable. It's valuable. You're just going to use certain skills from that experience and implement them with the new students. Because there are some students at the middle school level that are struggling, that will benefit from those elementary strategies. Think of it that way. Yeah. Think of it that way. Certain kids, you have 7th graders that are reading at the 3rd grade level. They'll benefit from phonics, decoding, reading practices. So you have that experience. Some of the best middle school teachers came from elementary, because they bring that teaching style to middle school. Okay? And it's still hands-on, and it's still interactive with the students. People that have only been in certain upper grades tend to stick to lecturing, and they have to be careful with that. Yes, but they're older, and they should be able to understand the kids. Well, they're still children. A 16-year-old is still a child. They still need to learn, and if you need to explain it with hands-on or visuals or audio or videos, do it. But some people believe, there's upper grade people that believe in lecturing because that's the easy thing to do. It's easy for the teacher in the classroom to just talk to the students. That's easy. It's more difficult to have the students interact, ask questions, do projects. That takes more planning by the teacher. Okay? So whatever skills you have that you brought with you, make sure you showcase them. Okay? Some of you might have financial skills. Maybe you worked in a bank. Well, that shows structure. You can teach mathematics in a real world situation. Some of you have military background. That's discipline, focus, procedures. Some of you have fine arts background. Well, creativity. It all depends what you're coming with, folks. Nobody's showing up empty-handed. But some people tend to downplay their skills for whatever reason. No, they're not gonna think that important. The guy that played the guitar, he got a job because it wasn't the only reason he got the job, but it was a factor. He was able to do a lot of the lessons with his guitar. The children loved it and they learned. How many kids learned from singing? Think about it. If you've ever heard about the Wiggles, you know, the blue, the red, the yellow, the purple, I know the Wiggles. I listened to the Wiggles for about 4 years. I learned the songs, I learned all the characters. You can tell I'm a daddy. I learned all of those things. You know, and it's so funny when you start realizing that they're actually instructional. When Captain Feathersword starts talking about the R like a pirate, well, guess what is the sound that children struggle to produce when they're little? The R sound. So what does Captain Feathersword say a lot? R. Isn't that funny? And this is it's a children's program, but it's educational. We just don't realize it. We just think it's a crazy pirate with a feather sword, you know? But it's actually educational. So think about it that way. How are you going to bring your skills from elementary and introduce them to middle school? I know people that have gone from mathematics elementary to middle school mathematics, loved it. They have the background, they can teach it, and they're doing very well. And then it's funny though, because they tell me that it's, in their mind it's less work, but it's not. It's just focused work. In elementary, you're teaching reading, math, science, social studies, PE, fine arts, technology. You're teaching a lot of things. In middle school, you're the math teacher. So you're focused, okay? It's different. Now in elementary, there are instances that you might be the reading teacher for that grade level, which is fine. You get to focus too. But just be aware that whatever skills you're bringing in with you, that's gonna be really, really helpful. But you do need to mention it, okay? Some people confuse the interview with a social event. They dress up, but it almost feels like they're going to a club. I've had that happen. You know, and it's a bad choice. They should have thought about it a little bit more. But in their mind, they were dressing up, and that's okay. Just remember where you're going. You're going to an academic setting. Yes, you want to look professional, but it's not a night out in the town. And it has happened, folks. And it is distracting. It is distracting for the committee members. It can leave a bad impression. Some committees are very open about it. They're like, you know, they don't mind. And there's other committees that are very conservative. You know, some committees are formed by individuals that are, you know, very creative, and they like, you know, they might be the more liberal type. And some committees are very conservative. Remember the administrator told you that the only thing she could think about was about the ladies' sandals? That's the one thing. And she told me herself, I cannot believe she walked into my interview with sandals. Well, needless to say, the lady didn't get the job. But that's the one thing she pointed out. Not how she answered the questions, not how qualified she was, the sandals. Nothing against sandals, but not a good time to, you know, the behavior. make sure you arrive on time. My rule, 15 minutes early, guys. You know, you should be at the interview at least 15 minutes early, settle in, take a seat, check in with whoever you need to check in, sit down, maybe, I don't know, open up your folder, look over some of the possible questions that you have right there, and just, you know, in your mind, go over them. You know, think about how you're going to say. You should have been practicing by then, but just have all that ready. A firm handshake, the eye contact. Very important to do the eye contact. Nothing wrong with that. And some people, I remember I had comments, why are we talking about eye contact? Well, you know, eye contact means a lot. When people look at your eyes, I'm talking to you. I'm being serious about this. You're making connections with those individuals. You can look them in the eye. You're telling them, I'm being honest with you. This is me. You carry yourself professionally. You act professionally. Yes, you know, everybody likes to kid around, but you also have to be careful about the jokes. Okay? Smiling and being friendly. I know that I pointed out avoiding smoking or chewing gum. Be careful with that because, you know, they might be able to smell it. The chewing gum, get rid of the gum before you walk into the room. And just overall, just be ready to showcase yourself as a professional you're expected to be when you already got the job. How will you act? Because many times when you walk into my interview committee, it's like, okay, is this the kind of person I want to be working with? Is this the kind of person I want to have with the students in my classrooms? You know? And sometimes the answer is like, I don't know. And it's not about physical appearance. It's about, you know, how are you portraying yourself? Okay? If some people don't even take the time to dress up for an interview, well, okay. Are they taking it seriously? Maybe not. Some of you are very shy. I'm a very shy person too, believe it or not. I am. I'm a very shy individual, but in my personal life, I'm a very shy individual. Professionally, I have to talk. Professionally, I have to present. We just presented to Deans of Instruction yesterday for middle school and high school. And you know, they're very interesting because they want things done and they have a lot of tough questions. But when you know what you're talking about, you're more confident about it. Okay? So think of it that way. How confident are you? And if you don't, and if you're very shy, fake it. Seriously. It's a character you developed. Carlos Olvera is a very shy person. Mr. Olvera is a curriculum specialist that travels the district and visits 58 campuses and talks to administrators and principals and area administrators. You see the difference? You have to play the role. That is a role. You might as well get used to it. Okay? Some people might tell you, oh, you know, the optimistic component. No, they already know who they hired. You know, I don't even know why I'm interviewing. I had a friend of mine tell me, he joked about it. He told me, they asked me 2 questions. What's your name? And don't let the door hit you on the way out. And but that was his attitude. That's how he walked out. They asked him more questions. He was just joking. But he walked in with the attitude, they already know who they're gonna get. That's the attitude he walked in. Well, how do you think that interview went? If you already thought they had already hired the person. Didn't go well. Because you could tell in his reaction, you could tell in his attitude that he felt he was just going through the motions. Some people might, in the past cohorts, like, hey, how does it work with the compadrismo and all that? I'm not gonna lie to you. People know people, but that doesn't necessarily get you the job. It might get you an interview. I remember getting a call from someone, hey, my daughter's going to interview, and you know, she's great, and she just graduated. Oh, okay, well, if she's on the application list, you know, if she's in the applicant list, she's a candidate, okay. Not the most, no. Didn't interview well, super nervous. I wasn't gonna hire someone because she happened to be related to someone that gave me a call. what, that doesn't work. Who's gonna pay for it? The students, the campus, the team. So, yes, there are instances that you might know somebody, or, you know, or somebody knows somebody and the name gets dropped. That might get you an interview, but at the end, who's the one sitting in the chair? You know? And like I say, that's my perspective, and I would hope that the other principals that I work with closely would have the best interest in mind for their school, for their students, for their team. It'll get you in the door. It doesn't guarantee a job, okay? But really be optimistic about it, because if you're already showing up with like, well, I'm sure they already have somebody, don't even show up, because you're already done. And they can tell, people can tell when you have that thought, you know. Okay? And of course, be yourself. You know, whenever I start the session, or before I start the session, I have a little chat with some people. I say hi, you know, and I like to break the ice. And it's funny because I always remember where people sit. Certain people sit in the same spot all the time, and that's very memorable to me. But, you know, and I joked about it because for some reason I didn't recognize a couple people, and it just came out like, have you been here before? But, you know, it happens. So you laugh about it a little bit and then you move on. You know, you don't dwell on that stuff. Okay? So be yourself, and more than anything, try to, you know, jot down what are the highlights? What are the points that are gonna get you the job? I've had the pleasure of running into some A-STEP candidates from back 2 years ago. They're now working at Pace, some of them working at Rivera. I mean, you know, they're working in different locations, and I'm very happy to see them because, you know, they'll bring up questions, and I run into them, and it's wonderful to see you guys out there when you've got the job. But you also have to remember, you're the one sitting in the hot seat. They call it the hot seat. It's not really that hot, okay? Yeah, it really isn't, because you just get comfortable. And if you need to slow down when you're answering the questions, slow down a little bit. Don't stop, but slow down a little bit so you can gather your thoughts. I point out keywords, folks. Get used to certain keywords. Student success, progress monitoring. Certain keywords that'll stand out when you're answering the questions. Because ultimately, folks, as an administrator, what do I want to hear? I want to hear that you're going to get the kids to learn and to be successful. That's what I want to hear. You can tell me everything about how wonderful you are, but I want to hear, what are you going to do for the kids? How are you going to get our scores up? What, you know, ultimately that's what I want to hear. And then I'll get to know you, you know, when you get hired and all that. But in the meantime, I want to know how you're going to help my campus. And if you have any extra skills that we can use for sponsorships and coaching and all that, even better. We can use you as a coach, as a sponsor. It's 7:30, we're gonna take a little break, and I do want you to come up with questions. Some of you have seen interviews or have been part of interviews. I will share some different questions. I wanna cover those, because whenever they ask, they're actually, there's a hidden agenda to a lot of those questions, okay? So we'll talk about that. We'll take a 10-minute break. We'll be back at 7:41, okay? Laredo, feel free to ask questions. Usually Laredo's more active. I'm wondering why they're not asking questions. Type the chat. Hey, how's it going?
When I was in college, I had a very heavy weight. So I didn't have too much time to learn to drive. So whenever a question comes here, comes up the way around, it's mostly always like on the high school side. But because it's high school, I feel like
True, I know.
You can mention it.
And that's
You know, and let me know. I think they explained it.
Like it's better than looking.
Just the way you described it. And then now,
I enjoyed it.
Like,
Oh, yeah.
I tried to.
I'm ready.
I tried to give it back to you.
I'm ready. I'm ready.
Those are my interview skills, sorry.
But I would definitely bring that up.
Take it.
What? I don't.
Oh, yeah, that's true, you did.
It's alright, man. That way Laredo gets to see how awesome you are.
But it's okay. Just all of my nose. Cameras like, oh.
It's all good. It's all good.
No, we can fix this.
Not just going to, he's just not going to be in the classroom. You got me more than, the classroom, that's would get, that's but it involves a lot more.
I asked most of my references are from Japan. So when I do like write them down, like the phone number, is that okay? I prefer to, just because I work for a person, but I can.
But I would be maybe or as close as possible, and the other one from, a foreign country. It's interesting.
But it's alright. And since it is like a phone number that we don't usually set, should we like add like an email or?
I would think an email, and I would think.
So how does that work? You guys do it every
No,
morning?
because isn't there lifetime?
Oh, definitely.
I would point that out, time difference. Or maybe, it's email. But that in itself is intriguing.
And someone
It was I volunteered with the kids.
But it's easy to find if the bedroom was in
Coordinator.
I type in
Little things like that, very interesting because.
see the bedroom.
See, you got it. That's very interesting. Sold, sir, got it.
Sure.
What's
Yeah,
up?
you need to practice.
No, that's good.
Practice.
I'm super nervous.
So I go, okay.
I'm okay with interview,
Today?
but like stage thing.
I'm actually, see, the biggest thing with me is what my references. So I sent it, well, that's the thing, I mean.
Oh, that's
My mom just told me that like the big projects, but like to do the research or something to do with
Just like a password.
My principal.
Oh,
I think she like, she had such a high turnover rate last year.
So it was you.
She blackballed several
So
teachers.
it was your assignment.
So that's why I'm like, how do I shoot it?
But I think
I'm
we're
like,
doing
I don't know what I shoot. What's going on here? Oh, he did it.
You did it.
Whatever one I can.
So you called?
I did do that. What did I do?
And then when I talked to me, you're that's what we had earlier.
Yes, I was really joking. Yeah, because it's original, so they're gonna rate their own work. I think so. I thought it
It'd be critical reason.
They had like 5 stars on that.
Yesterday.
But you were on
They taught me
I
saying
It's
that
like all like
Daredevil is a Netflix original, and that has very high stars. Iron Fist is a Netflix original, and that is has one in maybe like 4 stars. So I did.
You don't like I liked it in the beginning, but then the love thing came up. And like the whole point of the guy was like, oh,
It's really funny because like, and like, oh my god, he's actually not at all. And
nunca dijeron nada. Yesterday I texted somebody that number. So then today I texted you.
I thought the link you sent me was the entire episode. I got ready. Oh, it was just like the Dragon Ball.
Oh, yeah.
I was like ready. I
The
had my
episode is like 48 minutes.
I clicked into it and like it's 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Also, I think you know what she's in my.
You want it? I can send you it.
I think I have a website, but yeah.
You have English, Spanish, or Japanese.
Isn't it just like that?
There's the original Japanese, Spanish.
I understand. Okay.
Right?
Salted.
I know some of them are not.
I'm on mazapan. He was just eating one earlier, and I was looking at it, and I was like, should I just like?
Yeah, but you would break it.
So I bought a platoon.
I was watching you read that.
Those YouTube videos for
It's about where they bring to the team.
do you want to buy that? It is everybody's Marvel versus Capcom.
Everybody's just
In the spring,
Like the one that I saw was it was
So anyways, but yeah, the first time I got hired.
It was a triple call, like,
they just
So that gave me the
just same blue.
August 2011 to February 2012.
see if they're gonna put the new Super Trade thing.
That's kind of
I was the one that would test the students for the county. They would test them and I would, they came
Oh yeah, but you can.
So I had from Puerto Rico and Vietnam. So I would test them to determine the placement of the
Because the
Indian
super one would be like a
So I
Chinese
would do that, and then
He's always been a
during
baller.
their lunch hour.
No, he's always been a baller.
And so,
He's like a really
He's
super
more than
human.
that, I was just like,
He's strong.
like,
He's always been a baller.
you know,
Baller.
What do you think?
Hey. Don't be disrespectful.
And I remember when I was a kid,
That's why I like to get people thinking, what have you done? Must have done something.
Man, I've watched that entire series like 7-8 times when I was a kid.
yeah, because right now.
You know, like you were meant to stop.
Yeah, it was just the
It
end
was
of
doing so well. I was like, no, I gotta.
Yeah, well, see, when afterwards, when Suicide came, and they were gonna do what we did.
It's a foreign policy
It was
council.
gonna be all about, Gotham was gonna take place. We'll take one in this, and the new one, superheroes and died
So like, you know, like you said.
No, and then there's that other dude who's fighting right now, who's one stronger than a guy. He's stronger than a guy. See, he can beat Lagana. Yeah, I've seen all of them.
How's it going?
It's going good.
Bojack.
I don't know.
Project about,
So what grade beat
I still haven't seen the revival.
that's very true.
Revival?
Well, it's your was, but they took that and they put her at
For me, it's trash.
I mean, I didn't really,
Well, I taught him And so that's
Like
how
a-
we work a rhythm.
The board fights the disruption.
Then
he puts boundaries.
I would get them to remember it. I was like, oh, it's been 2 years, so.
freezing
Yeah,
games.
I'll do SIL, and I repeated with her several
Like
times.
science?
Stay in her head. So I'm like, someone had to, like, that's my, how do you call it, my,
So,
already, what's that word, like, yeah, like my,
Have you heard about that
strategy.
series called apparently it's to do with and in the series talks about it, but everybody's already left, and so they're left with
Like
like,
the one,
because you know how all the
that
stay behind
like
or they make the show.
Because.
Oh no, it's like
Hey, did you see
also, do you know Dark Tower?
we actually started
Also, you never
this is, that's like,
it's hard to
Okay, we're gonna start again.
see, this is the one.
Laredo, make sure you get involved. I know you're gonna be witnessing the mock interview, but let us know if you have any questions. I wanted to share with you all that one of the most common questions that they ask also is, what is your greatest weakness? And we're so good about pointing out our strengths. We're so good about, well, I'm good at this, and I'm good at that, and I can do this. We're so good about that, that when they ask us about our weakness, if we're not ready for that question, we tend to either answer it weird or come across as cocky. I've had people like, I don't have any weaknesses. And they think it's funny in an interview, and it really isn't. Because everybody has a weakness. Everyone does.
That's the weakness, the cocky.
Yes, that cockiness would be the weakness in that sense. But you know what, seriously, my response to that, how to answer that question, you always want to be genuine and point out something that you were weak on. In other words, and I think I want to say one of the videos points that out. In the past, I've struggled with, but I've been working on it, and I am, I'm now more confident in dealing with that situation. So you see, you did cite the weakness, but you're also indicating that you were aware of it and that you're working on it. When they asked me that, I told them, in the past, I have been afraid of public speaking. But through experience, through the years, through content knowledge, I've become more confident, and now I can work with it a lot better. And I'm good, I'm comfortable. So I answered the question, but at the same time, I connected it to, hey, a positive outcome. Okay, so do not say that you don't have a weakness, because they're not going to believe you, and it can come across, it's just a bad answer. But point out, what have you struggled with, and how have you become aware of it and improved it? That's the whole point, because now you're actually turning that question into something that's going to help you. Oh, well, hey, this person actually acknowledges that they have that weakness, but they worked on it. Nothing wrong with working on your weakness. It says a lot about you, that you progressed, that you're in a better place now. So think of it that way. You will be asked that question one of these days. So you might as well be comfortable with it. I want to point out something that was shared with me earlier, a few seconds ago. When I told you about what skills do you have, a lot of times we don't think about those skills as marketable. But you have to remember, we've been around for 30, 40 years, maybe late 20s. I don't know. I don't want to ask. But we've had all these experiences, right? And we've learned from all these experiences. So what in your background makes you more marketable? You know, and I'm glad, thank you for sharing she shared that she would test foreign students and decide, and to help determine where they would be placed instructionally. She mentioned that she worked with tutorials. She mentioned she was had a leadership role in the parental involvement section of football. So she put in a lot of things, but I like the fact that she's like, I hadn't thought about that until you brought it up. What makes you more marketable? Think of it that way. We are our worst critics. A lot of times we don't think that the skills we have are marketable or that they're not important enough, but they can be. Some of you have extreme organizational skills. Some of you might have decorative skills, some people are good with their hands, some people are good about talking, some people are good about, working with students that are challenging. You know how to get to those students and connect with those students. What skills do you have? So if you haven't thought about it yet, think about making a list of certain skills that you feel you have now, and also whatever weakness you have, jot it down and work on it. Because if you know that's a weakness of yours, you should be working on it. I keep telling you, some people are shy. Nothing wrong with being shy, but when you close the door and you're in front of 25, 30 students, you better get rid of that shyness, because you're working now. And if you have to play the role, you play the role, because you're in charge in that classroom. So this document that you all got, I went ahead and made you copies so you can write down your notes, and feel free to keep it. The only thing I'm gonna ask for back is a fish, but this one you're welcome to keep. Common things that can go wrong. The inappropriate clothing, we already talked about that. The rambling, if you got 10 minutes for 15 questions, or you got 15 minutes for 10 questions. Nowadays, they do it on purpose like that because they don't want to stay with you for an hour. They have 20 other candidates. They want to make sure you answer the questions concisely, efficiently, and memorably, hopefully, and then go to the next candidate. So the rambling, be careful about the rambling. Have your notes already, have the highlights of your life or academic life, have the highlights of your goals, have all that ready. The attitude, make sure that you're on. Like I said earlier, look friendly. If you have a serious face, there's nothing wrong with that. One of my favorite counselors in another district had a mean look, and I remember her. But she had the most beautiful personality. But for some reason, her facial expression was always mad. And until you got to know her, you understood. But it felt like it was a poor attitude, but actually she was a great individual. You're going to, you might get asked, what have you been exposed to? What have you learned? Well, tell us the last book you read. You might be asked that. Make sure you have an answer. I've actually been asked, what was the last book you read? Make sure you have a quick answer for that one, okay? The last book you all were exposed to was Teach Like a Champion. That's a wonderful book to bring up if you get asked, okay? As a teacher, you're never going to stop learning, folks. You're always, as a brand new teacher, you're going to get so many trainings. You're going to be mentored officially and unofficially, okay? I don't want to promise that you're going to get a mentor that's going to be by your side all the time. But you might get a colleague that will see you and say, you know what? This is the way you do it. They'll put you under their wing or something. They'll take you under their wing. It happens. You can't help it. We're educators. Some questions you might answer. You might be tempted to answer in a very short response. Be careful about that. You're not on the witness stand. you know, in the witness stand, sir, do you know what time, have you ever had that? When there's a commercial and they ask the kid, do you know what time it is? Yeah, it's 10:15. You're not in a witness stand, folks. You cannot answer with a yes or no. You have to elaborate, explain it. You know, have you ever had contact with students in a community setting? Yes, I was involved in the kickball, I was involved in Child Days, little dancing routine, I don't know. Come up with something, you know, but you have to elaborate a little bit on it. A couple of things, you don't have to, you know, extend it too long, don't ramble, but do elaborate. If you happen to have the question about you, do you have any questions? Do not ask about money, vacations, benefits. Don't ask about that. You might want to ask, you know, what type of, a good question, what type of mentoring program do you all provide for new teachers? Not only are you saying, you know, it's a legitimate question, but you also are telling them, hey, I'm open for guidance. I'm receptive to learning from someone.
What was that question again?
What type of mentoring program do you have at this campus? Interestingly enough, some of the committee members say, well, you know, we assign an official mentor. Other schools might say, well, usually your grade level will work with you and show you the ropes. Different schools handle it differently. But that is a good question. What type of mentoring program, especially because you're going in brand new. But avoid money, avoid benefits, avoid vacation time, you know, avoid anything like that. Because it might sound funny sometimes, but really, you never know who the committee members are. Some committee members are serious, and some committee members are, you know, a little bit more relaxed. So you want to play it safe, okay? So those are, you know, a few don'ts. The other document that you got, and feel free to share any experiences you might have when you. Okay, is it this one?
I have a question.
Sure.
In the part of the I have a friend of mine. She's been in BISD for like 10 years, 15 years. And lately, in 1 year, she's been to between 8 and 10 different schools. Do we put that in the resume? Or how would that be managed?
In 1 year,
She's been moved between 8 to 10 schools. How would that be managed? Because she was literally put into a pool. So
In
she's
what?
in 1 year. 1 school year, she's been moved like between 8 to 10 times.
Oh.
So
that would catch
how-
my attention very quickly.
How can you put that in a resume?
I would stick to the BISD. I would not mention, I would stick to the district level. I
Okay.
would not mention the 8 schools.
Okay.
Or floater?
Yeah, that's a very interesting situation
Okay.
because there must be a reason
Mhm.
for that, but it could be perceived as negatively by some committee members. Others, or it also depends how she explains it, you know? Because I can understand certain people that they're the last one into that school, so something happens, okay, you're the last one in, you gotta get moved. But that usually happens annually, not within the same school year, but that would definitely get my attention if I was in a committee talking to that person. I would advise that person to mention, I've been with BISD for so many years, and leave it at that. Or maybe the grade levels she has taught, but not elaborate on that little point about being in 8 locations in 1 school year. I'm not saying, it's something that doesn't have to be mentioned. Now, if they happen to ask, hey, Miss So-so, have you, it would be very difficult for a committee to ask you, how many times have you been moved? You know, so if they don't bring it up, you don't bring it up. Okay, but as a professional, I would be curious why that person has moved so much, and there might be a legitimate reason. I don't know. I wouldn't advertise that bit of information.
Okay.
Let me put it
So
that way.
that doesn't go in the resume, right?
Keep it at the general terms, BISD employee for 10 years.
Okay.
That would show consistency. Yeah, that's a good one. Good example, thank you for sharing. Wow. Anybody else? I mean, feel free to ask, this is the time to ask. Okay, this document right here, the one you're holding with the top 20 interview questions, what is your greatest strength as a teacher? Okay, like I said earlier, it's easier to perceive strengths than it is to perceive weaknesses. But even then, sometimes we're so used to not bragging about ourselves that we don't want to mention certain things. But certain people are known for certain things. Some people are known for technology. Some people are known for fine art. Some people are known for athleticism. Some people are known for, certain skills they have. And that's wonderful to be recognized like that. Yes, sir.
Is it unusual just for the principal to interview you, or does it have to be a committee?
It depends. Usually principals will start, the first round will be with a committee. The committee will then submit 3 names to the principal, and the principal would call them in individually. That's the norm, but there might be instances where a principal might just decide, hey, it's my call, it's my school, I decide. But the rule of thumb, and to avoid any complications, is to have a committee, because now you're getting buy-in from the people that are going to be working with that individual. And they make a recommendation, but ultimately it is a principal's call, because it's their ship. Let's say thank you. The second one is about the greatest weakness. We already talked about that one. The one about talking about yourself. Make sure you get to the highlights. What is your philosophy of classroom discipline? They'll ask about that. What's your style? What is your discipline style? How you respond to that? You have to point out certain things that you've picked up on. Have your rules, have your consequences, explain to the students. Make sure the students understand what's acceptable, what's not acceptable, working with your administration. Administration will work with you, but you also have to make sure that you understand. It is called classroom management. So you cannot expect the administration to go in and manage the classroom for you or your colleague. I've had instances, I think the gentleman here mentioned that he's called upon to settle the kids down. So you're becoming to be known as the disciplinarian. You get called upon to help settle the kids down.
Yeah.
But see, when you step out, what happens?
It happens.
And the teacher's getting paid. Where's the classroom management? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, it's not necessarily the teachers, because the teachers have it on lock. It's just the other people that I work with that have passed the baton, because they don't want to deal with it, and they've given me the torch. They're like, I'm the one.
Don't want to deal with it. Well, it's part of the responsibilities. I mean, but it is a team effort. The counselors can intervene. The administration can also be involved, but you also have to say, hey, I've done all this. I've talked to the student. I've called the parents. I've called the counselor. Obviously something's going on here. I need the administrative muscle to step in. Okay. Steps you would take when the student is disrupted in classroom. They're going to be asking about that because it happens. Some students are disrupted. Not all of them in a bad way, but sometimes they might be just the class clown, or they might be a little bit hyper. It happens, or they might be distracted. There are individuals that are easily distracted. If us as adults, we get distracted. Imagine a 10-year-old, a 15-year-old. The last thing he's thinking about is about algebra. He's thinking about a lot of other things, and algebra is not one of them. Okay? So these are questions that I like to share with you all because they might come up. And what exactly are they asking? So I'd like you to this is for you to keep. Review them. Discuss them with your colleagues or amongst yourselves. But more importantly, just make sure you have them available and you can start getting comfortable with them. Because when the day comes, you really want to show up with that background information. And we're not going to go through each one because I do want to get started on the actual interview, the mock interview. So, these are going to be the questions, okay? And I don't mind showing them to you because ultimately, you've already seen them, they're in the Padlet. But it's not about the question itself, it's how you answer, okay? Whoever gets interviewed, folks, it's gonna be a discussion. You know, it's gonna be what went well, what could have been, you know, phrased differently. There's nothing wrong with that, okay? So whoever it is, you know, we do expect you to do your best. So, the first 6 people, the committee members are, come on. And I understand from Juan that these people, that these are all only Bronzo people. Okay. Okay, so let's go ahead and, let's see, Saul. Okay, committee member. Thank you for participating. Who's Saul?
This because he said his name, and he was like,
Oh,
the right when
well, there you go. Okay, sir, go ahead and come over to the committee. Who's Vanessa?
A lot of them are not here because they already have jobs.
Oh, okay. Anna? Okay, there you go. Jessica?
Which one?
Jessica,
Oh.
sure.
That's not.
Are you racing too fast? Is she here?
Yeah, she's good.
Okay, great. Okay, Alma.
Me? Yes.
Alma, right? Sure. Wow. That's enthusiasm right there. Okay, next one. Randy. Where's Randy?
Randy boy over here.
Oh, okay. How many, Randy? 2, 4. Randy, you're 5?
Hey, Randy.
Woohoo!
That's 6.
Yeah, you did? I did? Okay.
Yvette?
You're Yvette? Oh, sure. Okay. So I guess we're set. Okay, go ahead. I'm in there. Okay, so last one. And after this, I'll move the card, put the cherry right here, and it's going to be interesting. Who's Joshua?
Me.
Hey! Terrible with names.
Prepared and everything.
Wow.
Good job. I was so nervous. I know, we're just like glad it's not us.
Okay, you comfortable in that chair? Would you like something else? That's fine. So what's gonna happen, and Laredo, feel free to, comment, I know the chat is on. What's going to happen is, we have our setup, we have our 6 candidates from different grade levels, you know, pre-KK, first, second, third, fourth, or, you know, what area? Middle school? Okay, so we've got 6th, 7th, and 8th, counselor, assistant principal, and, you know, PE coach. Okay? You're gonna get variety. Okay, I happen to be in the hallway, I rounded up, you, get over here. So, sometimes it happens, folks. You're in the hallway, you get in here, you're gonna be part of committee. And then you just sit down and you just wait for it. So, what's gonna happen is, we're going to role play it. You know, I'm gonna welcome you, and then, you know, everybody introduces themselves. I will remind the committee that, you know, you have to be, conservative, not too much reaction, not too friendly, but don't look grouchy either. You know, keep it professional. And I'll be asking the questions, and then you jot down the notes. And then after the interview, we'll do the discussion. Okay? Are you comfortable? Are you too close?
I'm fine right here.
Okay. Okay. So, the audience is welcome to take notes. He's going to use his teacher voice. I'll be asking all the questions, he'll be answering. Jot down some notes, because then the discussion will come up as to, you know, how things worked out, okay? Okay, so he walks in. Okay, good morning, Mr. Joshua Reyes, okay? My name is Carlos Olvera. I am the principal of Olvera Middle School. And thank you for coming in for the interview.
My pleasure, thank you for having me.
Okay. Our committee members are going to introduce themselves.
Hello, good morning. This is Saul Ibarra.
Morning.
I'm Anaida. Nice to meet you.
Hello,
Nice to meet you.
Hello, sir. I'm Randy Champa.
Nice to meet you.
Alma Gonzalez.
PE coach Jessica Castaneda.
Okay. And notice that she introduced her position also. She introduced herself and cited the position. Okay, that's fine. So,
Andrew.
Mr. Reyes, the way this is going to work out, we're going to have 15 minutes.
Okay.
We're gonna have 10 questions. I'll be asking all the questions. The committee members will be jotting down their notes. And for every question, they'll be placing a rating from 1 to 3, 3 being the highest. Okay?
That's good.
Are you ready to begin?
Whenever you're ready.
So, the committee members have their papers, so they already wrote down the person's name, the certification, okay? Mr. Reyes, first of all, tell us about yourself.
I have my bachelor's in engineering, so I bring a strong math background. I worked as a substitute for a couple of years, and I worked as a co-teacher in math, supplemental math, so I've had some experience with kids. Specifically, I also work in after school. I volunteered as a tutor, we called it a West Wing tutor, where the students that did not turn in their homework at the end of the day, they would have to go ahead and stay, make up whatever homework they missed, along with the homework that they did, that they would have for that day. And for the past few years, I've been working as a supplemental math teacher for 1st through 5th grade. So I've been working on my practice as I go along.
Thank you. What special skills or talents will you bring to your classroom?
I like to involve empathy with my students. I like to get to know each and every one of them, know their skills, know what they bring, know a little bit more about their backgrounds, so that way, if they're having any issues at home, I can go ahead and help them out. Maybe they come to school and they're not necessarily in the best place. I can see more or less what I'm going to do to accommodate them to make sure that they have the best experience out of the day, be able to learn, make sure I talk with the other teachers and let them know, hey, this particular student's having a good day. Go ahead and make sure he's kept on the ball, something like that.
Thank you. What educational, instructional trainings have you received or been exposed to? Please be specific.
In my previous job, I had several course collaborations where I would work with other teachers that were involved in giving the exact same curriculum that I was. We would have meetings to see how far along everyone was in the subject, what we could do to improve our own specific materials so that way the students could advance at a faster pace. I've also had some seminars on classroom management that I believe benefited me the most.
Thank you. Describe your discipline style.
When it comes to discipline, what I would do is I would go ahead and be the type of teacher that is able to work individually with each one of the students. Not much of a totalitarian, but more along the lines of I want to make sure that each one of them is on task. If I see some of the students that are off task, maybe I need to go ahead and consider my teaching strategy. What can I do to be able to get a hold of them to make sure that I have all of my students engaged and limit the amount of students that are off task?
What would we see if we walked into your classroom?
In my classroom, I would have students grouped specifically by, I would try to group them by their level. So for instance, the higher ones would be with the middle ones and almost like in a descending order to where, you don't have the highest student with the lowest student, but more along the lines of to see if they can help each other to grow as partners. And at the same time, I'd like to have their work on my walls, some anchor charts on my walls as well, along the lines of specific content areas that they're going to need, as well as I like to have everything set up on my boards, my calculators, everything structured to where the students know specifically where everything is.
Thank you. During a lesson, a child in your class pokes another child with a pencil. The victim is crying and needs immediate attention. What procedures would you follow in this situation?
The first thing I would do is I would go ahead and speak with the child that was at fault. Try to figure out, what was the problem, why that happened. Then I'd speak with the other two students. Afterwards, I'd intervene and maybe separate the two students as well as, if needed to, if there was a grave situation where the student that was poked was injured, I'd send him to the nurse, and I'd also send the other student to the office for the situation.
Thank you. A student is consistently absent in your class. You notice a pattern after reviewing your attendance records. The student is absent on Mondays and Fridays. How would you handle this situation?
The first thing I would do is I would speak with the student to try to find out what the situation was. Maybe there's something going on at home, maybe he doesn't have a ride. After that, I'd probably speak with the truancy officer just to find out if there's if he's also missing his first class. I speak with the other teachers to find out if there was any other situations where maybe he's missing there as well. And finally, I speak with his parents to find out, maybe there's something that's going on there that we can help accommodate.
Thank you. Describe your level of knowledge and comfort regarding technology. Please be specific.
Regarding the content, I'm able to work with the calculators. I believe I have firm knowledge of the type of instrumentation. I'm also very, very confident in my office skills and my ability to use Excel, which I tend to use a lot specifically for statistics, for grades and things of that nature. I know that I can also implement technology such as we've been working with Quizlet. I absolutely love using Kahoot to go ahead and help the students, to motivate them, make sure that to use that sort of like an exit ticket to find out how well they're doing.
Thank you. Tell us about Bloom's taxonomy and how you expect to use it in your classroom.
One of the things that I feel that I want to implement into each one of my lessons is, as a conclusion, I would like to ask the students specifically, not on a day-to-day basis, but more of on a weekly basis, maybe once or twice a week, based on whatever they learn. I'd like to ask them, how do you think this will be implemented in your future and within the next 3 years? How will this affect your time in college? How will this help you when you go out into the real world?
And last question, what is your greatest weakness?
I feel that my greatest weakness is one that I'm currently working on. As I mentioned before, I've been working on like classroom management seminars. That I've been told by my previous employer that was my weakest point. That is something that I intend to work on more throughout the year. I've been working as a substitute as well to get more experience in that, so that way I can have a better hold and a better control of what's going on in the classroom.
Mr. Reyes, do you have any questions for us?
I was curious if on my resume there's anything that you would like for me to elaborate on, or if there's anything that you would want me to mention. I was also curious about what other types of trainings would be involved if I were to be selected. What type of trainings would I have to attend at the beginning of the school year, during the school year, so that way I can know more or less what is expected of me. Maybe I can have some input and say I would like to go to these particular ones.
Thank you very much. Where's
I'm doing the job already.
So I'm gonna move the chair, but we'll stay here. So now comes in the discussion component. And we're gonna work question by question, because you heard a lot of things, okay? You heard a lot of things, but before we get started, okay. Any comments on the tone, the speed of the language, or how, any comments? Feel free.
A little monotone. Like a little monotone?
Okay,
Rapid, maybe a little bit too fast.
rapid, a little bit rapid, okay? And that's, because he had a lot of information,
Yeah.
and he could articulate, he was articulating well, but the tone was the same at all times,
Okay.
So, there's times that you can step it up, and there's times, that, because remember, you're excited because you want to be part of that team. So it's good to be calm, but at the same time, you have to project, you have to feel confident, okay? It was at times a little bit rapid. It felt that you were just saying too much. And I'm fine with that, because I don't jot down every single word you said. For every question, I might have written down about 3 or 4 words. That's my style. But I know that some of the committee members might have written down a lot more, like that one. She even used punctuations. That's good, that's a good sign. I circle, I know, I'll tell you, it's good, because this is actually on video, obviously, and I don't know if you ever get to watch it, but, it was a little bit rapid.
Okay.
And just pace yourself, You were within the 15 minutes for sure, and, I didn't do the clock, but it was a good pace, but you might consider easing up a little bit on the speed of language. About the telling of himself, when he told his background, how did you all feel about that? When he talked about his background, he mentioned, he started with engineering.
Impressive.
That's impressive, right? It's impressive to have an engineering background, and how he connected to mathematics. Okay, what else? Any comments on that? What did you catch from his words, from what how he commented on his background?
I think he touched everything where it came, it was like a bullet point of what he can provide to your students here at this school from the beginning to the end. I think he was confident in his answer.
He felt that he was confident about his engineering background, his connection to the mathematics, connecting it to the real world. Okay, special skills. What do you think about that answer? What special skills did he cite?
Empathy.
Anything else?
Rapport with the kids.
Okay.
Accommodation. A safe learning environment.
So he pointed out certain skills that will help him work with the students, keep the students engaged. But having an engineering background, he could have mentioned a few other things.
Yeah.
Skills about himself.
I kind of wanted him to
yes.
focus a little bit on the talents.
Yes.
That he, not just the skills. I wanted to see what type of talents he kind of had.
I mean, I'm sure you have, problem-solving skills.
Yeah.
I'm thinking problem-solving. I'm thinking design, or and you mentioned the calculator several times.
Yeah.
But mathematics people think differently.
Yes.
So that's what I wanted to hear.
Okay.
Just take note of that, because you have all these skills. As when I hear an engineer, I think of a person that thinks very structured, very focused, very analytical, because they have to be. And that's something you might definitely consider bringing into that kind of, that question.
Okay.
And the fact that you cited empathy, I mean, that also shows the other side, how you're willing to work with the students and make them feel comfortable with you. Educational instructional trainings you received, which ones did he point out?
Classroom management.
He pointed out classroom management, okay.
I like where he touched that he went to seminars.
Seminars, you didn't use the word seminars. See, and you're already citing, hey, I'm willing to learn on my own, or, take advantage of opportunities to learn. So that makes you look better, because you're telling the person, I'm willing to grow, I'm willing to learn, and that connected to the final comment he made. What trainings do you all offer? You're already telling me, I'm excited to be here, I want to be part of this team. How, what trainings can I benefit from, so I can help the kids? And that was a very good wrap-up question, thank you. Discipline style. question on describe your discipline style. What did you all catch from that one? Some of you were taking a
This
lot
one
of
I
notes.
felt, this one I felt he was saying a lot of like he was like,
Is that the
I
one
was
with the
stuck
pencil?
on this one a
What?
little
The one
bit.
with the pencil?
No, that's the describe your discipline style.
No, this is where he
The
put, he
children on
said
task.
he'd speak to the, to the
Get
individual
the students engaged.
by
Yeah.
himself.
I caught the word engaged.
Engaged.
To me, and as I've shared with you before, if you have your lesson plans ready, if you have your materials ready, if you have your children engaged, they won't have as much of an opportunity to act on, because they're busy. The busy students tend to not get in trouble. Yes.
One of the questions I have like relating to this, can you mention like involvement of parents? Because I know our campus focuses on parent involvement.
Oh,
So I don't know if could that pertain
Oh,
to how
definitely.
he would involve the
yeah, the
parents in
discipline
here?
style would be, you know what, you involve, parental involvement is important in our discipline plan in this campus or in my classroom. That way, the parents know what's going on, the students know what's going on, the expectation, the consequence and all that. And then as a teacher, you know, it's three parts, folks. You, the parents, and the teacher, and the students. If somebody fails to do their part, things are gonna happen. Or, you know, discipline issues are gonna happen. Okay? What would we see if we walk into your classroom? I like the way he mentioned grouping, you know, different levels. You are gonna have different levels, you know, unless you're in a pre-AP class or an AP class, advanced placement classes. You know, and even then, in some of those classes, you have students that don't really belong there. Okay? Please don't feel that just because you have the AP classes, that means that they're all going to be wonderful. It doesn't happen like that. You're gonna get various levels, okay? You mentioned groupings, I like that. You mentioned anchor charts. You mentioned, they're helping each other because of the groupings. Anything else?
The visuals on the wall,
Visuals on the wall.
content area boards.
Yeah, content area, specific content area visuals. You know, all that helps because that is your classroom, that's your kingdom, and you want to display instructional visuals. So that when the child looks around, let's say they're not looking at you for that second, well, at least they're looking at a formula chart or they're looking at a mathematics visual.
I know one thing that we're also focused on is classroom walls. So it's like our campus is high school, they're doing it with a high school too, middle school. But I know they do it in elementary where they display their work on the walls. And they're pushing that in our campus too, so I kind of jotted that down as to, I want to see like when you enter his classroom, the wall, if he's going to display students' work or something like that.
Now, we're not done yet, but these discussions take place after a lot of the interviews, folks. We, you know, and some people like, well, I didn't like the way he said that, or, you know, it's a lot rougher, you know, because they're behind closed doors. But, you know, it's not about a wrong answer, it's about what could have been better, or what could have been adjusted. You're actually benefiting from this because you're like already thinking, man, I should have said this, I should have said that. During the lesson, child gets poked. The victim is crying and needs immediate attention.
Yeah,
How many things did he do before thinking about sending the kid to the nurse?
Four things before.
Yeah.
That was the third one.
Think about it that way. Somebody got poked. Now, I know that most of us have lead in our body somewhere.
I'll say, yes, I know there's a.
Everybody does.
A rule that you're supposed to.
Okay, yeah, everybody, yeah, I know, you're pointing at your hand.
When a child is bleeding, I know there's, because when I went to school, you're supposed to separate the child, the kids from the child, because you don't know if he's got AIDS or anything, and then you attend the child. But you gotta separate, that's the first thing you do is separate the child, and then help the child, and then go ask, see if he's okay, and then ask for help through the intercom or send somebody to the nurse. Like, there's a standard procedure you're supposed to do.
The immediate medical attention is very important because obviously, you know, the fact that the child's crying and got poked, and there's been instances, I know of one instance where a child who was getting bullied, he attacked the bully with a pencil and pretty much, for lack of a better word, stabbed him. And it turns out that the victim who became the person that stabbed, he is the one that got in trouble on that one because he actually did a stab with a pencil. Okay, so anytime there's an issue with medical attention or somebody or bleeding or broken skin, you have to deal with that first, and the investigation will come. Okay, immediate, and that's why I put that there, immediate medical attention. Student consistently absent, I like the way you mentioned, gotta talk to the student. Try to figure out what's going on, because many times, the student will be honest, and it's not their fault. I had an instance in summer school that the student was constantly late every day for summer school. There's only 17 days in summer school. The student was out 3 days because they were in a trip. We allowed the student to walk in to still try to make up summer school, but then shows up late around 9:30 every day. It wasn't the little girl's fault. The mom wasn't waking up. So it breaks your heart, but the child's still missing out on instruction. The parent swears that they'll wake up earlier the next day. Can you imagine telling the parent, ma'am, please wake up on time so that your child can show up to school? I had a parent disputing a retention. The child had 26 absences, 16 tardies. 26 absences during one school year.
Mine's had 30. My son's had 30 absences.
Yeah. That is instruction that has not happened for that child. They've missed out on instruction. And then the 16 tardies, when I asked the parent, what about the 16 tardies? Well, we were in the parking lot at the time. And I go, yeah, but the child's not in the classroom. They're missing out on instruction. So you see, you're gonna deal with situations like that. And you gotta find out what's going on. Get to the bottom of it. I like what you said, start with the child, what's going on at home. You also mentioned we're talking to other teachers and the truancy officer. That was a good one because a lot of schools don't have truancy officers in elementary. Middle school, they have parental involvement, home visitors. And high school, that's when they have more of the truancy officers. But then they decriminalized truancy.
Yeah, you can't do it no more. That's what I was saying, you can't.
You can't send them to court anymore for truancy.
Oh, wow. I know, like, when you mentioned it, I was like, you're not supposed to send them to court.
Yeah, back in the day you could. I knew somebody that had to pay about $400 about 20 years ago. She had to pay $400 because Junior didn't want to walk into the classroom. But I like what you said. Start with the student, find out what's going on, and if you can make arrangements or work it out something, okay? Anybody catch anything on the absences? And I like to ask them because they might have heard something I might have missed. I started looking at the audience. Some of you are very attentive. Some of you were not. Okay, seriously. Some of you were focused on something else, not on the task. But keep in mind that you're going to be in that hot seat. Maybe not as a new teacher, but maybe to move to a higher position. You want to make sure you're always attentive. And I know it's easy to get distracted. I got distracted when I started looking around. I don't know if you noticed.
Yeah, I did.
This one is where I noticed he felt more comfortable answering out of the other questions.
Mhm.
This is the one I felt that he felt more
Yeah.
comfortable with answering.
I really like the end, what he said at the end.
His questions.
Yeah, like
Yes.
what he told you.
Those are very good questions about the resume. What could I, what could I elaborate on? I like that. And also the trainings. You asked
The
about trainings.
yeah.
Yeah, that was very good examples. Describe your level of knowledge and comfort regarding technology. You mentioned calculators again. You mentioned Office. Office is okay to mention, but by now, if you don't know Word, Excel, PowerPoint, it's not a wow effect anymore. Back in the 80s, it was. Now it's more of, I'm glad you mentioned Quizlet, Kahoot. I'm glad you mentioned those because that's what helped you recover from that. Nowadays, folks, basic computer knowledge is Word, Excel, PowerPoint. That doesn't impress anybody anymore. You gotta keep it instructional. Quizlet, the student response systems, web-based instructional program. And I'm glad you threw in different names of softwares because that looked very good. Anybody catch anything else about the technology?
Well, I think the use of Excel now is overlooked. So I'm sure what you use Excel for is more than just a basic spreadsheet. So you need to mention that.
Yes.
When you're using it to, like you mentioned the grades in the different classrooms, show how you're integrating all of those spreadsheets. Because I have a feeling that's where you're going.
Yeah.
There's times where
Elaborate on it. Nice.
Yeah, like in the,
Good point.
I do
you can do the
Excel.
sums, the formulas, the things on the
Functions,
Excel.
yeah. That's true.
I use
The
Excel to
invoices
do
and things like that.
I do receipts with Excel.
Receipts with
Like
Excel?
when I do a photo shoot, I use that as a receipt.
There you go, there you go. And plus you can always connect it to real life, you know, for the students. Any other technology you could have mentioned?
I think he can add up the physics. When you have an engineering degree, you have physics too, so you can add math and physics, you
Mhm.
know. Also, I think it's very important.
Build
Physics
rockets.
and how the-
Yeah, go rocket.
yeah.
Yeah, so think about that, you know, I'm sure you have a lot of technology background, I can tell, but I didn't hear it. You know, you mentioned a couple of softwares, there could have been more. Okay, anybody else have a comment?
I'm just saying, if he uses more of those words that, you know, go with engineering and scare the boots off of him, it's like, oh, you know, this guy knows what he's talking about. Because usually that's what they say
I
they
think you
do.
need to program, right? They assign you to program a computer, right? When you take an engineering class.
Yeah.
You need
Okay.
to program a computer.
That sounds important.
I don't know why I said that. You need to program something, I don't know what it
Well,
said. I know
whatever it
something-
takes to impress us, you know. Bloom's taxonomy, I asked him to tell us about Bloom's taxonomy. He mentioned about asking students to think about how they would implement the knowledge they just acquired. Did he actually talk about Bloom's taxonomy? Okay. When it comes to that question, the reason I like to put that question is because when you're doing instruction and you're teaching at a very, very basic level, it's like, okay, recall details, you know, just regurgitate what I just told you. That's the basic level, you know, but when you're actually creating something or you're evaluating something, those are the higher levels of instruction. So Bloom's goes from simply remembering to actually creating something. So if you're teaching students a concept and then you tell them to create a project or create a story, even a story, you're teaching them how to create a story through character, setting, plot, knowledge, and then you say, okay, you all create your own story now, you know, try to give us a fairy tale or something like that. They're thinking at a higher level, and this is how you can tell the difference. Bloom's taxonomy, at the low level of remembering and just recalling, and you give them kids a worksheet, they're all gonna have the same answer, right? They're supposed to have the same answers on the worksheet. At the higher levels of Bloom's taxonomy, where they're creating and evaluating, every student should technically have a different product. Think about it that way. When you have the students create a product or a project, they'll come up with different things because their creativity kicks in. They're having to think about it on their own, okay? So yes, you use the word implement, but you want to make sure you talk about the different stages of Bloom's taxonomy. I know it was covered at one point. So
Yeah, but when you involve technology, I think in one of the videos, it just flips it around because of the creativity. You start off with creativity and stuff, but when you implement the technology, I think one of the videos was mentioning that, where because in Bloom's you build foundations.
You start with just remember
Yeah.
what you were taught, and then
And
how
you
are you
go
gonna
work a
explain it,
step up.
and how you're gonna expand on it, and how you're gonna implement it, and ultimately, what are you gonna create yourself? Based on what you learned, can you create something? I mean, in engineering, they teach you all the principles of engineering, and I understand they might have asked for a project at the end.
Yeah, there's different levels of projects. So you do an individual one, then you do a group, and then you do a team project.
Using all the skills you've been taught,
Yeah.
you have to produce a project. Think about it that way. That's your Bloom's right there.
Okay.
Okay. What is your greatest weakness? He mentioned the discipline, classroom management. One of the things that caught my attention is my employer has told me before, or my previous employer had told me, I would kind of leave that comment out.
Okay.
You know, just focus on, this is it.
This is what you've
I'm working on
recognized.
it, and I attended the seminars, and things are better now. You know,
Okay.
you know, I
So just omit that.
wouldn't, I don't know, I got a
Yeah.
vibe when
Yeah.
I heard my previous employer has told me. Did you get the same vibe?
Yeah,
What's up?
because for a living, I do interviews for jobs, and that's, you don't want to avoid that, especially because class management is very important
Yes.
as a teacher. So I would probably not mention that you have that problem.
It makes it seem like it was such a big deal that the employer
That
had
the
to bring it
employer had to
in.
point it out.
So it was, it was something that went from something simple to getting the actual employer involved.
I think, you know, just leave
And
that
I think,
comment
yeah.
out, that about the employer, and I think you can still work with that answer. You know, probably, you know, you might wanna choose something else. Don't, be careful about that one, because classroom management is so important that it could be a turnoff for a lot of people.
Okay. But just say, I don't know how to say no. So that means
And you did mention you're working on a substitute. Anybody else?
Sir,
Yes.
what are some examples, like, not that are happening, but like, what are some examples?
About the
That
weaknesses?
are like positive that we, yeah.
Well, we talked about public speaking.
Right.
We talked about time management. That's also another example. You know, in the past, I've struggled with time management, you know, but I've learned to work with a calendar, with, you know,
Like organizational
structure, my organizational skills. You might consider also extracurricular activities. In the past, I haven't been involved with extra, you know, but I'm volunteering more now, things like that. I mean, it all depends, because you can't really fake it. You have to find your own weakness, you know. What do you classify as your weakness? Some people.
Because on that, you don't want to come across as fake, because
Exactly.
then you're coming across like, oh yeah, I used to have a weakness, but
Yeah.
now I don't have any.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
It's something that you're legitimately working on.
Yeah, something you're legitimately working on, you know.
With like inexperience in that, like for example, being honest, like if I was doing, well, I've never had experience in this, like in middle school, isn't that a weakness kind of?
Well-
Like inexperienced, and that's,
In what area of middle school? Because you have instructional experience,
Right.
you've taught.
okay.
So you can't really say it's a weakness. It's something that you're bringing with you from elementary, and you're shaping it and polishing it in preparation for the middle school kids. So it's not really a weakness. If anything, it's a strength to bring that skill set with you.
I'm trying to find, I'm now thinking about a weakness.
Yeah.
But I'm not.
Okay, it's okay. You know, it's not easy sometimes to come up with a weakness because, you know, we're very comfortable with ourselves.
I had a question that
Yes.
was, have you had anything negative happen in the workplace?
As an
Like
interview
was-
question?
Yeah.
Yes. There are certain interview questions that will ask, so is you are made aware of gossip, how would you handle that? I've seen that question in an interview. Your colleagues, you were involved, or you walked by a classroom, you noticed gossiping going on, how would you handle that? And, you know, of course, you want to be professional about it and not be part of that. It goes back to professional communication from the Code of Ethics. And I know gossip happens. It's gonna happen no matter what. The only advice I can give you folks, try to remain as professional as possible, because my rule is this: if people talk to you about other people, they're going to talk about you too. So it's a very simple idea. If they gossip to you about other people, they're gonna gossip to other people about you.
Oh, so that's when you start eating in the passion.
Yeah.
To stay away from.
The teacher's lounge, a lot of administrators stay away from teacher's lounge on purpose, you know. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. Okay, so I graduated as a teacher 10 years ago, but I didn't pursue it. Is that gonna hurt my chances of now applying for a teaching job?
Depends on what you pursued instead.
Management,
That's a skill. What kind of management?
retail management,
Okay. So were you in a leadership role?
general manager, and,
Okay.
and trainer.
You see how you know, it's becoming something positive. Yeah, you didn't lose out on 10 years of instruction. You gained 10 years of experience in working with organization, in working with individuals, collaborating with individuals. See, I'm looking at it from a positive perspective, not the fact that you lost out on 10 years of instruction.
Because I feel like that would hurt. I think because
It's how you
they,
spin it.
they would ask me like, well, why didn't you pursue it back then? And I can easily say money, but the fact is, you know, I don't want them to say, oh, so are you in it now because, you know, because you decided that you wanted to, like, I don't want them.
You might phrase it at the time, an opportunity to work with this team of individuals and set up certain procedures or certain processes in retail was very appealing to me, and I learned from that experience.
Well, because I do teach, I'm a trainer within the company.
Then you were training, you were teaching. See how you have to spin it in a positive perspective. Yes, sir.
Individual entities or the city.
Why bring that up?
If they ask.
Well, because my degree is EC through fourth grade.
Yes.
So they're gonna ask me, what's your bachelor's? EC through fourth grade, and then, okay, well, tell me, they're gonna expect me to have a resume like his, and I don't have a resume like his. Actually, you know, I.
So you focus on what you have done. You have been a trainer.
Right.
So you have provided
They
instruction.
won't put things together like saying, well, you have an early childhood development through fourth grade, ESO degree, but you didn't pursue teaching, and now you wanna pursue teaching, like, that's where I feel like it won't hurt me.
Well, they're gonna ask that anyway because my resume, when I first started, I had nothing to do with teaching. My resume is like totally way off. Like, I was a manager at a post office in my college for like 6
But
years.
yeah, but that's the thing, like, I went for teaching, and then I decided not to
You
go
mean
into
4-year traditional?
four-year tradition,
Yeah.
student teaching.
It'll get their attention,
Yes.
but it also depends how you continue the interview and you share what you did in those 10 years and how that has led to you wanting to join this career.
Yeah.
So it's not frowned upon, but it'll get our attention. It would get my attention, but see, how you answer the other questions will make up for that one.
Yeah, you're gonna have to make it up with your experience. That's because that's what happened to me. Like, my experiences of working those jobs allowed me to be prepared for them to hire me at that school.
So think of it as the skills you gained from that, and you just happen, now the life has led you to this point, and you're ready to now join the field of education with this new skill set. Okay, always spin it positively. Yes, sir.
One of the things that gets me most nervous in interviews is the whole rambling, and I bring it up because you guys said you wanted to hear more. So would you say his answers were more or less?
I think the answers were, I don't think he rambled, but he started fast, and then he kind of slowed down and paced himself nicely. But the rambling, when I say rambling, I'm talking about, you're talking about yourself, the college, bachelor's, A-step, and all of a sudden you just keep on going about the calculators and too much, and after a while it's like, okay, you know, the rambling would be a little bit too much.
Because I know, like, sometimes I just lose track of how long I have been talking. So just like, oh, I gotta stop. And sometimes you guys want to hear more.
During the interview, they'll have the phone or a timer, and they'll tell you, like, you got 5 minutes. And they'll tell you, Mr. Olvera, you have 5 minutes, and you still have 2 questions left, or 3 questions left. So you pace yourself. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Is there a particular reason, other than the fact that there are various candidates, that 15 minutes is the limit, considering that currently in classrooms, 15 minutes is not even a quarter of the classroom time? So how do you expect candidates to be able to give you enough information about themselves and their qualifications in less than the time that it takes for sometimes for you to introduce your lesson, your objective, your attendance, and all of those things?
If they have about 20 candidates, they're not going to want to spend 45 minutes with each person, because they need to be able to tell in 15 minutes if you're the type of person that they want to be part of their team. So you need to get comfortable in very quickly showing people how wonderful you are in 15 minutes.
Would it also have to do with the attention span?
Attention span will be a factor, and remember, you're talking about 7 personalities, and we're gonna be there 15 minutes, okay, next, 5-minute break in between, next, 15 minutes, 5 minutes, next. You're talking about 15 candidates, and we gotta sit here for all 15 candidates.
It just seems to me as a candidate that you don't actually care enough to put a whole hour of a time, and I'm not saying you particularly, because I understand that the school district, various people in the school district are very different and very busy. You are sometimes being interviewed by principals, assistant principals, coordinators, perhaps even superintendents, but I am taking time out of my day to want to join your team, and I just don't feel that in the span of 15 minutes is enough to cover what I can do for you. I know I can sell myself, and I know we are all here to sell ourselves to the school districts that we want to work in, but I think that all the preparation and all the time and all the just everything that goes into an interview being cut down to 15 minutes can seem a little, not negligent, but careless.
And some schools might give you more time. Some schools might give you more time, but you gotta remember who wants the job and who's Those are the rules. If one school says 15 minutes, that's all you get. Whether you agree with it or not, doesn't really matter. The school's giving you 15 minutes to show how awesome you are. Some schools might give you 20. That's fine. But the schools set their parameters because they gotta deal with all these people out of the classroom, and the kids are losing out on instruction.
So it's gonna change per district
can.
and per school?
Yeah, the different schools, some schools might have the 7 people, other schools might have 3. Other schools might do it after school, other schools might do it during the day. So it all depends. You just gotta be aware of the rules and do your best to show them as much as you can about yourself. That's the thing. You're there. If you tell me you got 15 minutes, I'm gonna sell myself in 15 minutes. If you tell me I got 20, I'll take 20. But you just gotta follow their rules because obviously you wouldn't question the committee there. You wouldn't tell the committee, I want more time. No. I told you, you got 15, and it's on the paper. I told you got 15 minutes, that's all you got. And there's candidates that get cut off. Thank you, your time is up. Thank you for your time. And if you didn't finish the answers, you don't get scored. You get zeros on those questions. So you gotta be very aware, folks. 10 questions, 15 minutes. If you don't get to question 9 and 10, you get zeros on those because you didn't get to it. Okay? So be careful with that. Watch your time, pace yourself. Yes, ma'am?
I was in an interview, and they started off telling me that I was gonna have to answer 7 questions. It was a
Okay,
committee.
I'm sorry. Hold on. I want to make sure everybody listens to this example. Ladies, what's the example, please?
Oh, that I interviewed for a position, and they started off with telling me that it was gonna be 7 questions. And there was like 1, 2, 3, like 5 or 6, including the principal in the committee. And it went from 7 questions to 14 questions, where they just kept asking me questions and I answered them as, they weren't timing me at all, and it didn't seem that they were rushing into it. It was a very relaxed atmosphere, very comfortable, but I just you went from 7 to 14 questions, and I'm going at the opposite side of what she's saying, is that they cut your time, and then all of a sudden you're there cutting you 7 questions into 14 questions, and I think, like you said, it can sway by, campus to campus, because I went to another one, and it was, I answered like a couple, I want to say maybe 5 questions. We were done, and I'm like, that's it? And they're like, yeah. I was like, I came all the way over here for 5 questions, and it is, and I felt the same way, but at the same time, it's 14 questions to 5 questions, and it's in there, the game is theirs. They get to manipulate the interviewing process, as they please. We can't go in with an expectation of, because it changes from one campus to the other. And both campuses were from Bronzeville, and the thing is that they were principals about the same age, male, mid-age principals, and so it's just how they run their schools.
And the scary part of that is that, yes, they have certain flexibility to indicate how they run the interview, but when it turns from 7 to 14 questions, I would have a problem with that, because if you're gonna do that for one candidate, you better do it for all the other candidates. Exactly. See, that opens up a can of worms, because if the other candidates are, well, I only got 10 questions, well, I got 14, well, I got 7, that's where things can go wrong and people can read.
Right.
That's why my perspective is, you're supposed to be consistent and you give every candidate the fair opportunity, same amount of time, same questions, and I've even directed my committees, do not ask additional questions, because then that might be there might be considered a bias for that person. And sometimes we're curious. Sometimes we want to ask more questions, but we already have them listed. So everybody's supposed to follow. That way you don't open up yourself to any grievances. That 7 to 14, I would be very concerned about that, and that should not be happening.
I would think they would like her. I would think they would like her and they would wanna know more about her.
And they hired, the 14 were the ones who hired.
And that's fine, but they better ask those 14 questions to the other candidates also. That's what I'm talking about, consistency.
And I didn't think about it because the lady that interviewed that same day, after me, we got hired and I saw her at the BISD building and I didn't think of asking her, how many questions did you ask?
You should.
I'll do it.
And I know it's hard, folks, because I have felt like, well, my time is valuable. Let me just share this. I remember walking out of a dental office one time because I was there on time. And they had me waiting for 30 minutes and I'm like, hey, my appointment was at this time. Well, we're ready for, I got here on time. But see, I wasn't trying to get a job.
Yeah, they don't care.
I walked out. Book me for another time. I got things to do. But I wasn't trying to get a job. If I was trying to get a job, sure, I'll wait. Not a problem. You see the difference? So you want to be, just remember, who's looking for the job? Yes.
I've been in interviews where it was like it went well, like it was awesome, like it felt like I took it, like came off cool. It lasted less than 5 minutes, and then
one of the questions that I got was,
and then I'll go to another one and it lasts like 30 minutes, and I get that one,
That's true.
One of the questions I got was if they could communicate themselves with the previous employer.
Can they what?
Communicate themselves with the previous employer and say, well, they're added as one of my references.
Oh, yeah, of course. I mean, when you cite somebody as a reference, you're telling me I can call them. And I love calling people. I like it. To me, it's like, what can you tell me about this person? And it's not necessarily the principal. Sometimes it's the dean of instruction, could be the assistant principal, because they're the ones that really deal more with the teachers than the principal. It happens. But I like making those calls. Josh?
I had a question. One of my interviews was 45 minutes, where it was the same setup, where it was like this, where it was 10 questions, but then they also required me to give a lesson. To where you give a lesson and then they give you feedback and then you're supposed to give a lesson again using that feedback. How often does that happen?
I've actually used that at a middle school we were at. We would do the 15 minutes into question and then we'd say, okay, go ahead and teach us something about your content area. Go ahead. And we had people choke and we had people that stepped up to the board and taught us a lesson on mathematics, on science. But yeah, that does happen. Every so often, it's like, okay, we're done with the question section of this interview. Go ahead and teach us something now.
So would you recommend preparing something?
I would have a skill to teach just in the back of my head, just like, I don't know, if you're a math person, I mean, what's your favorite math concept?
Well, the one that comes to the top of my head is dividing fractions.
Okay, there you go. If you're applying for that position for middle school, then, have it in the back of your mind. And if it happens, okay, teach us something. Teach that because you're comfortable with it.
Okay.
Some people don't react well to that scenario. They choke.
So they don't tell you ahead of time?
Not necessarily. No. They don't have to.
And then you can turn it on them. I need everyone listening, get your pens out right now.
Yeah, I had one candidate that was interviewing for a teaching position. Within the interview process, he's like, do you all have a teacher aide position? Maybe I think I can do better in a teacher aide. And this is in the middle of the teacher interview. And thank you very much for your time. Bye-bye.
Go away.
That was it. What does that show you? If they're applying for a teacher position and midway.
He's not confident.
Yeah. Very bad. And it happens, folks. The one that was late and, a little bit too late didn't help. So there's going to be a lot of that, a lot of scenarios where people, don't prepare. The best thing you can do, folks, your interview, they usually call you 3, 4, 5 days ahead. You really should get ready for it, okay? If you need to take half a day, take half a day. Better to invest that half a day relaxing and focusing than to run to school or run to your job and then run out an hour before, run into the interview, breathing heavily. It has happened, okay? And the fact that they're here, they might be in the interview committee interviewing you guys. You never know who your boss is going to be. You never know who your reference would be. I was asked by one of the candidates, okay, could you be a reference of mine? I go, yeah, I've seen your work. I've seen you interact with colleagues. I've seen your work ethic here in the sessions. I could be a reference, okay? You never know who's gonna be in your interview committee. So be careful about what you say and what you do.
And road rage.
And road rage. Always include road rage. Yeah, or when you walk into the building, say hi to everybody. You never know who's in the interview committee that they step out. I've been in a hallway and somebody walks by, they're going to the restroom. Committee members. You never know who's gonna be. I'll give you one last example before we wrap it up. I was talking to somebody at Porter, and this is a very positive example. The gentleman was like, oh, I just interviewed for this position, like, oh. When he told me what it was, I was supposed to be a committee member for that position, to interview. And I had a conflict, so I didn't. But it was interesting, you know, had I been there, I would have actually seen him in the interview, and then I would have seen him after school. You never know who's going to be interviewing you. You never know which one of you could be somebody's boss here. Things happen, folks. So you might as well, you know, work with people. Sometimes you just follow the rules. There's, you know, I don't agree with 10 questions in 15 minutes when for the administrators' interviews, but it is what it is. And you just go with it, and that's the rules of that game. You do your best, okay? This experience really helps in showing you one example, but there's obviously more. And if you're still trying to figure out your weakness, I'm curious about that. But just keep in mind, folks, be ready. You already have questions, you have copies. The fish stay with me and John, okay? Any questions before we wrap it up? Okay, y'all have a great Wednesday night. Thank you, guys. Yeah, please stay here. Laredo, I was hoping to get more questions from you all. I got a 23.